Good afternoon.
You ready?
Good afternoon. Welcome to this monthly meeting of the Planning Commission for the City of Rehoboth Beach. It's at 2 o'clock and we are ready to go if you are. Secretary, please call the roll.
Commissioner Bryan,
Here.
Commissioner Davies,
Here.
Commissioner Dewey, myself, Commissioner Ellison,
Here.
Commissioner Gay,
Here.
Commissioner Hunter,
She's absent.
out, okay. Commissioner Stewart,
Here.
Commissioner Stockdale,
Here.
and Commissioner Strange.
Here.
Ms. Womack, would you please verify the notices given for this meeting?
The agenda for the Planning Commission regular meeting was posted in City Hall and on the city portal on March 1st and was sent out from the portal the same day. Public notice for public hearing of lot consolidation and partitioning application number 1023-06 for the property located at 6 St. Lawrence Street. Public notice for public hearing of partitioning application number 1123-07 for the property located at 40 Park Avenue. Public notice for public hearing of partitioning application number 1223-08 for the property located at 54 Kent Street. And public notice for preliminary review of partitioning application number 0224-01 for the property located at 10 Columbia Avenue were posted in City Hall and on the city portal on February 15th, 2024. All four notices were published in the Cape Gazette on February 20th and February 23rd, and Delaware State News on February 21st and February 24th. Notification specific to each property was mailed out to property owners within 200 feet, and signage was posted on each property. That's all I have, Chair.
Thank you. Any correspondence? Any old business? All right, I think we're ready to go, and let's start with the public hearing of lot consolidation and partitioning application number 1023-06 for the property located at 6 St. Lawrence Street. Mr. Dukes, I believe, is counsel for the applicant.
Some context, right?
Yeah.
Are we going to do the building inspector report first or the applicant first?
Oh, I see for this.
I'm going to lay some context.
Okay, great.
So for each of the matters that have been on the agenda today, at least for the three that are going to be that have been scheduled for a public hearing, I'll just provide a very brief context to move things along, just to provide some context. This is not testimony. This is just context, and people can take notice of it as they wish. But the applicants and the public can present whatever testimony they want to. So Robert, with regard to 6 St. Lawrence, Robert O. Pronger seeks to consolidate into a single parcel the following two adjacent lots located within the corporate limits of the city of Rehoboth Beach. 6 St. Lawrence Street A, which has a tax map parcel number 334-20.06-90.00, formerly lots 18, 19, and 20. It's also referred to as Lot A, 6 St. Lawrence A. And the second lot, 6 St. Lawrence B, with the tax map parcel number 334-20.06-91.00, which is also known as Lot 21, or formerly known as Lot 21. Upon consolidation, the applicant seeks immediately to subdivide the consolidated lots into two lots, having different lot dimensions than the existing lots. And therefore, taken together, the consolidated or combined application effectively seeks a lot line readjustment, and this will be referred to as a combined application, which is application number 102306. The applicant filed a combined application with the city's Building and Licensing Department on or about October 18, 2023. The Board of Commissioners enacted an ordinance on September 15, 2023, ordinance number 092301, in which the Board of Commissioners, among other things, generally amended Chapter 236 of the City Code to create a mechanism for the Rehoboth Beach Planning Commission to approve the consolidation or separation of certain lots in a summary manner. In that same ordinance, September 15, 2023, the Board of Commissioners amended City Code Section 236-8.1 to provide that an application for a lot consolidation shall be placed on a meeting agenda of the Rehoboth Beach Planning Commission for preliminary review, provided that upon a recommendation from the building inspector, that all parcels that are the subject of an application for lot consolidation meet all the requirements of City Code Section 270-22, the chair of the Planning Commission may determine that preliminary review is not required and schedule a hearing as required under City Code Section 236-28. The Board of Commissioners in that same ordinance also amended City Code Section 236-8.1 to provide that an application for a partition shall be placed on a meeting agenda of the Rehoboth Beach Planning Commission for preliminary review, except that, upon recommendation from the building inspector, that an application proposes a partitioning of lots to their originally plotted configuration as shown on a legally created plat recorded in the Sussex County Office of the Recorder of Deeds, and which plat has been recognized by the city, the chair of the Planning Commission may determine that that preliminary review is not required and proceed to schedule a hearing as required under City Code Section 236-28. On February 7, 2024, a memorandum was prepared by the building inspector for the city, in which the building inspector determined that the proposed partitioning of these lots, once they're consolidated, if they're consolidated, proposes a partitioning of lots to their originally plotted configuration as shown on a legally created plat recorded in the Sussex County Office of the Recorder of Deeds, which plat has been recognized by the city, to wit, the original lot lines as set forth by designation of the Rehoboth Beach Camp Meeting Association. And based on the above recommendation of the building inspector, the chair of the Planning Commission has determined that a preliminary review of the combined application is therefore not required, and therefore scheduled this public hearing for today.
Thank you. Mr. Janis, would you like to lead off, please? And you were the ones who submitted the memorandum to me, and can you tell us a little bit more about what is requested and what you observed when you reviewed the application?
Certainly. Thank you, Chair, and happy Friday.
So far?
Yes. So to kick things off today, before you is application 1023-06, which is a lot consolidation and partitioning of 6 St. Lawrence Street. Essentially, it's a lot line relocation, but we don't have lot line relocation in our code. An application has been submitted to consolidate and partition the following 2 parcels into 2 parcels. As stated, 6 St. Lawrence Street, known as Lot A, or Parcel A, I should say, AKA lots 18, 19, and 20 of Rehoboth Heights subdivision, tax map number 334-20.06-90.00. And 6 St. Lawrence Street B, AKA Lot 21 of Rehoboth Heights subdivision, tax map number 334-20.06-91.00. Both parcels are located within the R-1 Residential District. Lots 18, 19, and 20 form a 75-foot by 100-foot, 7,500 square foot parcel, and Lot 21 exists as a 25 by 100 foot parcel at 2,500 square feet. Demolition has removed the structure that was constructed across the property lines. The applicant desires to merge the properties together to form a single 100 by 100 parcel. Upon merging, the applicant then desires to separate the parcel into 2 50 by 100 parcels. This is essentially a plan to relocate an existing property boundary to create 2 conforming parcels. Remaining on the 2 parcels is a retaining wall that is located at the back or south of the property that was not removed during the demolition because of contour differences between these and neighboring parcels. The wall is classified as existing nonconforming and shall be repaired or replaced in kind only. No new additions shall be permitted to the retaining wall. Per 236-8.1, procedures for consideration of application. 1. Upon a recommendation from the building inspector that an application proposes a partitioning of lots to their originally plotted configuration as shown on a legally created plat recorded in the Sussex County Officer of the Recorder of Deeds, and which plat has been recognized by the city, the chair of the Planning Commission may determine that the preliminary review is not required and schedule the hearing required under 236-28. I have determined that this application reverts lot lines to the original designation as laid forth by the designation of the Rehoboth Beach Camp Meeting Association. If approved, the parcels will require recordation with the Recorder of Deeds of Sussex County, Delaware. After the deed has been recorded, the applicant shall submit a live signed and sealed survey to finalize and address the parcel created. The City of Rehoboth Beach Building and Licensing Department has reviewed the application and has determined that the submitted materials are appropriate for Planning Commission review. The city acknowledges that there may be issues identified in this review and that the Planning Commission may identify additional criteria that may need to be corrected or revised in future submissions. Consequently, the applicant's rights have not vested by virtue of this determination.
Thank you. Mr. Dukes.
I think you have a package in front of you that shows all.
Bring your microphone closer to you, please, sir. There you go.
My name is Hal Dukes, for the record, with the law firm of Tull and Razor, representing Mr. Robert Progner. He's the owner of these lots. Everything has been presented to you. We have surveys of the previously existing structure. That structure's been removed. We actually have pictures in your package to show what was there. Now the lots are completely empty, and we're in a position to say that the Mr. Progner is ready to go ahead and go to the next level where he'd like to have 2 lots there. I think we're code compliant on everything. We submitted a check for $1,400. Mr. Meadow was nice enough to call me this week and suggest that I should say this to you folks, that you've been paid. So that's been taken care of. And in the course of events, I think that everything's in the package, so we're code compliant.
And you have filed your documentation necessary to have you appointed as representative of the...
They have that over here in their file.
Okay.
You have that, Matt?
We do.
That's a recent arrival,
Yeah,
I believe.
okay, because we didn't have that before. Yeah.
Anyone here from the public, or would the applicants themselves like to speak about this
No, I mean,
application?
it's very simple. It's a code compliant 2 lots, nice neighborhood. My client has selected or is talking to a local builder who is a high-end builder, so it's going to be something that would match the neighborhood if and when it gets designed and built.
Can we ask questions first, or you want to go to the public first? I'm curious what's going to happen with the lots. Are they 2 new houses? Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I guess I do have one question for Matt. Matt, generally on these reviews, of course, this one has gone straight to public hearing. Get back to that in a minute. But typically for these partitioning reviews, there's a review of the tree plan. There's a tree protection plan, and we consider that. But the lot's already been cleared. Do the 2 lots still meet the tree code as currently?
So we don't look for tree code compliance at demolition. We only protect them at that point.
But there is a tree protection plan. There was one.
Yes,
when
there
they
was
were-
a tree protection plan for that demolition, and the tree code will be acknowledged if and when future construction documents come in.
Right, no, I know that. It's just that typically, it seems like and I realize this is only coming back to us now, having been an administrative function for the last, 5 or 6 years, but typically when we see petitioning review applications, we go over the tree protection plan and also make some comments or conditions related to trees, and we just don't see them. I realize we're sort of in transition now, but I just wanted to ask if there was one when those houses were demolished. There's a
Yes,
tree protection
so when
plan.
the house was demolished, there was a tree protection plan submitted as a requirement for our demolition plan.
Okay,
If you wish, we could certainly add tree information into the future
well, it's in
partitionings.
the instructions. It's still in the instructions, and I know you're revising them, but I think it's useful to have only because it says that the preliminary that petitioning reviews include both code compliance for 236, 270, and 253. So that's the reason I mentioned it. I guess the other thing, should I just continue on with the other loose end, is my understanding is that this lot is not in the original camp meeting, but is in Rehoboth Heights, right?
Correct.
So your report says that it's the camp meeting, that on our final resolution, we should note that as Rehoboth Heights, right?
Correct, but the map that we rely on, it says the camp meeting, and that's the document that was used to create all the parcels in Rehoboth when it came to into existence. So that is the map that we reference when we go back to look at if it's returning back to its kind of standard layout as it was originally deeded from the creation of the city.
But it didn't include Rehoboth Heights then?
It included this portion for this, but if you look at the map for this was actually, I believe it was listed as a hotel at this particular location.
Right. I wondered about that because we just saw the map yesterday. Because the other thing was that it's the ones that are going straight to public hearing are supposed to be returning to their original configuration, but these were 25-foot lots.
Correct.
So it's not. So the consolidation. There's two changes here. The consolidation is a change, and then the partitioning is yet another change. All of which are resulting in legal lots.
Right.
Nothing is going back to its original configuration here.
So we consider that as, each lot is made up of two 25-foot lots as designed, I guess, if you want to call that, from the original layout for the city. We know in the zoning code that we can't create a 25-foot lot. It has to be a 50-foot lot. So each lot that is 50 feet is two of those 25 by 100-foot parcels. And that's generally speaking because there are some instances out there where there's a half of a 25
That's what I'm getting at. Is I thought we were going to be noting what the original was and then what the plan was. But anyway, I don't have a problem with the creation of the new lots. I think it's a great plan. I just wanted to clean up and make sure that what we had in terms of its location and what is truly the original lot is the same as what's in the record.
Right.
Any other questions for the building inspector?
Well, I would just like to note that it's my understanding, and this is recorded or reflected in the 2020 comprehensive plan, that Rehoboth Heights as a subdivision was not incorporated into the city until the late 20s and was not and never was part of the original Rehoboth Beach Camp Meeting Association subdivision and its various plats and plots and so forth. So you might want, because this is going to come up again and again.
Sure.
And so that's something to just put on your list of things to check on for
thank you.
future petitioning.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone here from the public that wish to speak for or against this application? Hearing none.
Let me just do some cleanup. I want to make sure there's a factual record for whatever the planning commission is going to do. It's important that the record be clear. So this question is for either Mr. Dukes or for Mr. Janis. Just confirm, please, that both the consolidated lot and each of the partitioned lots will have at least 50 feet of frontage on a street.
Sir?
Both the consolidated lot and then the partitioned lots, per your application, will each have at least 50 feet of frontage on a street.
Correct.
Is that correct?
The plots show that. They're 50 by 100 foot
I'm just trying to make a record for the public, okay? I know we have a bunch of stuff. The public may
I
not
thought that was
have,
incorporated in the record, sorry.
the public may not have read everything. Mr. Janis, do you agree with that?
I do.
Okay, and similar question to both of you, that the consolidated lot and each of the partitioned lots will have an area of at least 5,000 square feet, therefore, it's pretty obvious.
Yes.
Agreed.
Okay, and then that the partitioned lots will be able to contain a rectangle of at least 4,000 square feet in an area with its shortest side measuring at least 48 feet.
Correct.
Agreed.
Okay. And otherwise, are there any deviations from the zoning code resulting from either the consolidation or the partitions?
Could I just
Please.
raise a question about the retaining wall?
Please.
I just want to confirm that the retaining wall is unaffected by any action we would take. In other words, it cannot be changed through the power of the action that we're taking. Is that correct?
No, the retaining wall is going to stay the way it is.
Okay.
To be perfectly honest, it's in the setbacks anyway, so construction would not have any effect on this at all. But it's just a relationship with the neighbors that's important, so we want to keep it the way it is.
Thank you.
And just to be clear, Mr. Janis, just to follow up on Mr. Stockdale's point, you've determined that that retaining wall is a pre-existing legal non-conforming use,
Correct.
or structure, I should say. Thank you. Again, just to all of you, to both of you, the lots are commonly owned by the applicant.
That's correct. There's a copy of the deed. It's a part of our presentation.
I'll pose a question. Some of you may want to follow up. The definition of the partitioning into the code is section 236.3 of the code. Any subdivision containing not more than 2 lots fronting on an existing state, county, or municipal street, not involving any new street or road or the extension of facilities, and not adversely affecting the development of the remainder of the parcel or adjoining property. Just to make sure that there's a record for this, I take it this is not, the partitioning is not involving any new street or road or the extension of city facilities. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. When Uncle Verdon and Bob Hinckley did this in 1926, they copied it and they sent right down the way it is, set down with Mr. Wingate in 1951. They incorporated the whole thing into the city of Rehoboth.
You concur with that? And similarly, that the partitioning would not adversely affect the development of the remainder of the parcel or adjoining properties. Mr. Janis, do you have a view on that?
I think everything's fine there.
And just to be clear, a condition of approval will concern the retaining wall located at the back of the property as existing non-conforming and shall be repaired or replaced in kind only, and no new additions shall be permitted to the retaining wall. Is that correct?
That's right, and that language comes strictly from the zoning code when we said that no new retaining walls can be created through the city.
Okay. All right. Do we have a motion?
Well, I would move that we grant this partitioning and lot consolidation request as presented, subject to 2 conditions. One, that the applicants comply with City Code Chapter 270, Section 21A, which has to do with preservation of natural areas. And secondly, that this approval shall not be deemed in any way inconsistent with the building inspector's determination that the retaining wall is a pre-existing legal non-conforming use or structure, I guess.
All right. We have a motion. Any discussion?
Second.
Second? All right. Any discussion? We'll need a roll call vote.
I'll just remind each of the members, when you give your vote one way or the other, please state the reasons for your vote one way or the other based on the record and the code.
All right. Roll call, please, Mr. Secretary.
Commissioner Davies?
I'm voting obviously for the motion. I believe that all the requisite findings have been established with respect to the requirements of the zoning code and the requirements of our subdivision code, and that the result is going to be 2 buildable lots that will hopefully enhance the neighborhood when wonderful new projects are constructed there.
Commissioner Dewey, who is myself, I would follow along with Commissioner Davies, and rather than take time to repeat everything that she has said, I'll accept everything that she's put into the record.
Is your vote yes?
Yes.
Okay, good.
That's important.
Next.
Commissioner Ellison.
I vote yes on this, and I see no reason not to agree with the proposition. And again, I also hope that some very nice residential projects come out of it. Thank you.
Commissioner Gay.
I vote yes, and as my colleagues have said, I'm pleased with this project. It will create a nice addition to the neighborhood, and it is code compliant, and I'll also add that it does not create any new nonconformity, and so I'm fully in support.
Commissioner Stewart.
For the reasons stated here, I am voting yes for this project, and weigh heavily on the fact that we're ending up with 2 lots that are code compliant except for the retaining wall.
Commissioner Stockdale.
I too vote yes. I think this is clearly a code-compliant proposal. The presentation and the discussion was excellent, and I look forward to seeing a improvement on the lots when the work is finished.
Commissioner Strange.
I also vote yes, based on the facts that are presented are in fact all code compliant, and I think it's an excellent application.
Commissioner Bryan.
Yes, I vote yes as well. It is code compliant, and as we begin the process of working through these types of applications, I hope to see more just like this. Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
Okay, one down.
Next, and Matt, I guess if you want, we could start with you on the next application if you wish.
Which
I
application
think
would
our
you like to
council
proceed
has
with?
outlined a lot of important information concerning all of these applications.
I like it.
Do you want to, you can do an overview?
Why don't we let Matt go? I don't want to duplicate what Matt's going to do,
Okay.
so.
Which application number are we looking, are we?
Moving to 40 Park?
40 Park.
40 Park, thank you. And hello again, Planning Commission. Let's see here. This is application number 1123-07. This is a lot partitioning located at 40 Park Avenue. An application has been submitted to subdivide the following into 2 parcels. 40 Park Avenue, also known as lots V and U of Seaview Park subdivision, tax map number 334-14.13-250.00. This parcel is located within the R-1 Residential District and consists of lots V and U as part of the original Seaview Park subdivision. The 2 lots currently form a 100-foot by 100-foot parcel. A variance request, Board of Adjustment application number 0223-02, was approved on March 27th, 2023, to allow the relocation of an existing 2-story single-family dwelling unit and create a side setback of approximately 0.7 feet over the required 10-foot setback. The applicant then desires to subdivide the property into 2 50 by 100-foot conforming parcels. Should the Planning Commission grant approval, a condition should be set that the structure is relocated as proposed. Once the relocation has occurred, the Planning Commission may then require an inspection and further documentation to show that the conditions have been met and that the parcels may be created. Also note that there is currently an accessory structure located at the rear, southeast of the property. The structure is shown to be offset from the property line by 1.6 feet, Existing in the structure is an area created as bath and shower room. No permit exists or record showing approval for the creation of this area. A condition should be set to either remove and abandon the use completely or relocate the accessory structure to an area on the parcel that would allow the construction to remain. Again, I'm not going to read 236-8.1, but it is there for your viewing pleasure. I have determined that this application reverts lots lines to the original layout and I won't say the Rehoboth Beach Camp Meeting Association, but it reverts lot lines laid back out, laid at that time. If approved, the parcels will require recordation with the Recorder of Deeds in Sussex County, Delaware. After the deeds are recorded, the applicant shall submit a live, signed, and sealed survey of both properties to finalize and address the parcels created. Again, the City of Rehoboth Beach Building and Licensing Department has reviewed the application and has determined that the submitted materials are appropriate for Planning Commission review. The city acknowledges that there may be issues identified in this review and that the Planning Commission may identify additional criteria that may need to be corrected or revised in future submissions. Consequently, the applicant's rights have not vested by virtue of this determination.
Just a couple follow-ups on that, Matt. The tax map parcel number of the existing lot is 334-14.13-250, is that correct?
Correct.
And the applicants filed the application with the city on or about November 17, 2023, is that right?
Correct. November 16th, to be exact.
Okay, thank you. And you submitted a memorandum to the chair of the Planning Commission on February 14, 2024, is that right?
Correct.
And just to be clear, I want to make sure, I suspect this may come up, but the Board of Adjustment, a separate body of the city, the Board of Adjustment issued a decision on various, I guess, variance and appeal requests of the applicant on April 24, 2023. Is that correct?
I believe it was March 27th.
Oh, that's, well, that was when the hearing was.
So the hearing, yes, and then the
Decision was April 24, right?
I will agree with that.
Yeah, and your recommendations are made in the context, or in the context, at least in part, in the context of that Board of Adjustment decision. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone have questions of the building inspector at this point? All right. Yes, sir.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Vince Robertson with Parkowski, Girk, and Swayze, and I am here on behalf of the applicant. I have Mark Wagner here with me today. He's one of the property owners. The other is Catherine Palmer, who's Mark's sister. She's in New England. She couldn't be here today. And just because it fascinates me, Mark's wife is watching from Paris, where she works. So everybody wave to Paris, France, you know. So one bit of housekeeping, just because we just touched on the Board of Adjustment decision. There were two decisions. Just for the record, there was the one that was just referenced by Mr. Janis. There was a follow-up written decision dated August 28, 2023. There was a discrepancy on the measurement. It didn't affect the outcome. There was a discrepancy down one line, how long that wall of the house was, and that was corrected with a motion for rehearing. So there is a Board of Adjustment written decision dated August 28, 2023.
Can you supply that to?
Certainly, yeah.
And does that affect the actual conclusions of the Board of Adjustment, or just discussion?
It doesn't at all. It confirms the line we were talking about.
19 feet instead of 14 feet.
Yeah,
something like
right.
that.
Because we'll get to the house is being rotated. Everybody knew the wall we were talking about. It just had the wrong number in the decision. But I can definitely supply that.
I guess we should use that as the official Board of Adjustment.
That's why I just wanted to bring that up. I'll get that to Ms. Womack after, just rather than interrupt things. So the home, I should say both Catherine and Mark are children of Ruth Wagner, and she passed away in 2019, which led us to where we are today. The home sits on a 100 by 100 foot lot, as Mr. Janis stated. That's plotted as Lot V and Lot U in Seaview Park, and that's subdivision. It's identified that way in the only zoning map that Rehoboth has at this point. You know what, Ann? I realized I'm sitting there clicking through this and we're not on the screens. There we go. That's helpful.
Perfect.
Just so everybody can see my lovely presentation. That's the house. That's the survey that I just talked about. And here we are with the 2010 zoning map. Where the X is where this lot shows. And interestingly, you'll see that west of this property, there's several large 100 by 100 lots that appear on the zoning map. That was a snapshot of where things were in 2010. And if you look at this is the aerial photo that's the county tax maps. It doesn't show up that well in this one. Again, the property's outlined. But in the current tax maps, you can see that all those lots, again, west of this, except for the irregularly shaped one at the end on Park and 2nd Street, they've all been partitioned. That's, if you all remember, that's where the corner cupboard was, and the houses that went along with that. When the corner cupboard closed, they were all partitioned. The deed does refer to both lots U and V, and I guess what this boils down to is we're trying to save the home that exists there. Again, this is what the property will look like when it's done. The home that currently straddles that line between lots U and V, that will be pivoted 90 degrees so that it's all on lot U. So again, this is the house as it appears now, with the front facing outward. If you go back, the front will actually be facing lot T to the west. One of the reasons that Mark feels so passionate about saving this home, it was built in 1926. We have actually the original blueprints of it and instructions to the original builder about the types of materials that were to be used. And I'm not going to read this, but it's just really fascinating. It was actually, at one point, because it was one of the earliest homes built on Park Avenue, it was a hunting lodge at one point out there. It's substantially constructed. There's solid wood tongue and groove paneling throughout. There's solid oak beams, and the main beam running under the length of the home is actually 18 inches wide, which is substantial. This is a picture just for reference sake to give you an idea what the inside of the home looks like. This is the living room area. It's not all of it, it's about half of it. But to give you an idea what kind of home we are talking about and why it's important to preserve it. The particular home's been in the family for more than 50 years. Again, when Ruth Wagner passed away in 2019, the property was left to Mark and Catherine through her trust. And again, they do not want to sell the property as a 100 by 100 lot because surely the home would be torn down if that were to occur. Mark, who lives in D.C. and whose family and his wife and children have all grown up in the home, he wants to preserve it. And he will retain, as I said on that prior survey, the westernmost lot with the home being relocated and pivoted onto that lot. And I should say that this hasn't been something that's been undertaken lightly. It's not a whim or a wish. Mark has had quite a bit of consultations with a local builder about doing that and house moving company. There's been a lot of discussion between Mark and his professionals with the city about how this will work and what they will have to renovate on the home to bring it to code compliance and that sort of thing. So I don't want you to think that, you know, this is just a hope that if we get the partition, this will occur. There's been a lot of foundation laid already for this to happen. One of the things, of course, we needed, as we talked about, was a variance from the Board of Adjustment for the easterly side of it. And the home straddles over that setback line by a little bit, and we got a unanimous vote from the Board of Adjustment to grant that necessary side yard variance along that lot line. As I mentioned, the front door will be here. The porches that appeared on the house will be removed because they wouldn't withstand the move. There will be a new front porch that's established to designate the front of the home facing out towards Park Avenue. So I also want to point out, because it came in the last conversation, trees. This was also something that was very important to Mr. Wagner on this. And one of the things that we don't want to do is impact trees on either property. And that's the reason when Mr. Wagner rotated the home, it's set back the way it is because that impacts the least amount of trees. It keeps this large tree in the back. It keeps this magnolia tree, I think. Is that a magnolia or? That's an oak. An oak, okay. I couldn't remember what my trees I'm not that great at. But it preserves that one, all these trees on the property line, these trees here, as well as these trees, you know, and these line trees as well. So the house will pivot that way, maintain those trees. Currently, the driveway's on this side. It would go up this side. We'd lose one smaller tree here. But there was a lot of thought given to tree preservation. And of course, nothing's going to happen to these trees on parcel A, which was lot V. They will be, they'll remain, but then also if and when a home's ever built on that, they would have to comply with the tree requirements at the time that exists when somebody wants to pull a building permit for that. So, as I mentioned, step one of this process was, well, I guess step A, the first step was to make sure moving the house is feasible. That's been done. Step one in terms of the city was the Board of Adjustment, and we went through that process and got those variances. Step two is today, getting these lots recognized the way they were originally plotted as the 50 by 100 lots. And if you all act favorably upon this, then step three will be to get a building permit for the move. Just because I want to make sure we make a complete record, the neighborhood is the Pines. This house is on an unpaved section of Park Avenue. As I mentioned, it's in the vicinity of where the corner cupboard was. There are a variety of old and new homes in there. Obviously, the homes that are along here are all new, but there's a hodgepodge of homes. There's a very large home over here. There's even a log cabin that's back in there on Park Avenue. It doesn't look that way from the inside or from the outside, but on the inside, it's an old log structure. It looks like a camp home. Unfortunately, as we know with the corner cupboard home or properties, many of these older homes are being demolished. What we don't want to do is have this home be demolished. The comp plan supports the preservation of these older homes when we can. Certainly, we hear a lot of outcry in the city, just around town, about the demolition of older homes. This is a creative way to avoid that happening by granting this lot separation so that the home can be pivoted and saved in Rehoboth. Because I think it's an historical structure. It's recognized by the Rehoboth Historical Society. I know that doesn't really mean much. It has the plaque, but it shows the age of it, and the research has been done to confirm its age. So, in summary, each of the lots, and I'll just go back. These are some of the newer homes along Park Avenue, 41 Park, 44 Park, and 38 Park, just to give you an idea of the types of homes that are there, all on 50 by 100 lots. I'll get to this in a moment. Each of the lots is the way it was originally plotted, the 50 by 100 lot. The lot with the home complies with the FAR, the lot coverage, and the natural area requirements. The lot and the home will comply with the tree requirements when moved. And as I mentioned, part of the reason for the specific location on the lot is to preserve the large tree that we pointed out. There's ample space for parking on the lot with the home as rotated, and obviously there's ample space on the other lot. And of course, the vacant lot will comply with the Florida area ratio, lot coverage, parking, and natural area requirements in place whenever it's ultimately developed. Now it's, once the house is moved, it'll be vacant, so all that will be zero. With regard to that accessory structure, it's a shed. We went to the Board of Adjustment on that, and we kind of got no decision. There was 4 people there at the board, and it was a 2-2 vote. And the issue came down to not the shed itself. The issue came down to the shower that's in the shed. You can see in this middle picture, just to give you some idea, the one where my cursor is, that faces the rear of the home. So that part of the shed at the back of the lot faces towards Park Avenue. This door is closed now, but it's actually kind of brilliant. There's a shower that was installed inside that door. There's no other electrical service or anything in there. And Mark testified during the Board of Adjustment hearing that his family actually went and, we'll say, salvaged plumbing fixtures from the Henlopen Hotel when it was destroyed during the storm in 1962. So based upon that, the plumbing fixtures are at least 60 years old at this point. The shed itself is the same age as the house, so it's 1926. But we didn't get a decision one way or the other on the shed. What we think is appropriate, if he has to take out the plumbing because there's an issue with that, we can live with that. But the shed itself should be treated as a legal non-conforming structure, given its age. Kind of like the retaining wall we just talked about. They won't touch it, they won't move it, but because it's been there and it's not impacted by it doesn't cross the lot lines, it's not impacted by the house move, we would like that to be considered a legal non-conforming structure, because at this point, that's not been decided one way or the other. I mean, I guess it's been decided by default at the Board of Adjustment because we got a tie vote, but nobody has said formally it's not a legal non-conforming structure. So with that, I'll conclude our presentation. a little bit longer than Mr. Dukes, but there was some information we had to go over on this one. So certainly respond to any questions you all have.
I should have done this before. I think it's less of an issue with an attorney because an attorney's bound by the rules of professional conduct, and therefore any proffers that you make that are factually based are deemed to be covered by the rules of professional conduct. But I should have done this with respect to you, Matt. Can you please, for the record, confirm that the statements, the factual statements you made in the prior matter and in this matter, can you aver or swear or affirm that your factual representations to the Planning Commission are true to the best of your information, knowledge, and belief?
I do.
Thank you.
And to the extent you would like me to do this, Mr. Mayor,
That's up to you.
Well, Mr. Wagner, why don't you come forward and just, that way you can confirm, and you can just go to that microphone right there, it's fine. Mr. Wagner, you've heard what I've stated to the Planning Commission this afternoon. Do you agree with everything I've said, and do you have anything you'd like to add?
I do so attest. Everything that Vince, my lawyer in this matter, has said is true. I would like, if I may, to make a brief statement, somewhat impromptu, because I wasn't anticipating speaking, but
Go ahead.
Commissioner Davis was making points about trees. I wholeheartedly believe that tree preservation and preservation of Old Rehoboth are really important. That's why I've been going through this legacy or odyssey of 5 years to try to get this to happen. And as far as, I don't want to dwell on the shower because we can make that work as however, but I do have evidence that shows that it was built at the same time as the house and can provide that. It's been there since 1926 when the home was built. And we don't want that to hold up anything here. But I think at a later point, that's something that we can, as of now, I've disconnected it because all the water needs to be disconnected. I have in place the tree plan. I have in place the plumbing and sewer disconnect, as well as the electrical disconnect, and all those will be taken care of. Then go under contract with the house mover, who will rotate. He said easy because it's made of wood, and he's done a lot of experience with these older homes, so I think that's not really a concern. And with that, I'll step down and I guess I could answer some questions if there are any.
So what you've stated today is that you would either abandon or completely get rid of the shower facilities in the accessory structure.
That's correct. They're currently disconnected, so they would remain disconnected.
Anything else? Any other questions of this gentleman?
Not of him, but
Just, and again, my question go to either to you or to your attorney, doesn't matter. Again, this is solely for purpose of making sure there's a record for whatever the Planning Commission is going to do. So again, Mr. Wagner, you and your sister are the applicants and the owners of the existing lot, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And again, for either one of you or for Mr. Janus, meets the definition of a partitioning in that the subdivision contains not more than 2 lots fronting on an existing street, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Not involving any new street or extension of city facilities?
That's also correct.
And otherwise not affecting the development of the remainder of the parcel or adjoining parcels. Is that your view?
Yes.
Is that your view, Mr. Janus?
Yes.
Has the fee been paid for this application?
Yes.
In the amount of,
Quite sure Ms. Womack wouldn't let us get here today if she didn't have her money.
and that was $1,400?
Yes.
All right. And I think it's subsumed, but that the partitioned, each of the partitioned lots can fully contain a rectangle of at least 4,000 square feet.
Yes.
Yep. And subject to the Board of Adjustment decision and subject to the use of the accessory structure of the garage, the partitioning itself does not otherwise create a non-compliance with the zoning code. Is that your view, Mr. Janus? Is
That's correct.
that your view, Mr.?
Yeah, that's my view.
And then just again, to be clear, Mr. Janus, make sure that your recommendation is consistent with Mr. Robertson and what the applicant have said, that the accessory structure that's shown on the photographs, the placement of that structure, they have said, and I think the Board of Adjustment opinion indicated that it was your view that the placement itself of that structure is an existing legal nonconforming use. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But it's that the use of a shower facility in that is, in your view, not a legal existing nonconforming use. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Now that, do you mind going back to your lot, your plot, your site plans? Just because I'm visual. Can you walk through the two Board of Adjustment decisions? I understand we're talking about that right margin.
Right.
And so what happened? They said that's fine, that you're in the setback to the extent you are. What was the second decision?
It was the same. And it's a little hard to follow on this. The survey that we had, what happened to my mouse? There we go. At the first Board of Adjustment, the surveyor, for some reason my mouse keeps disappearing. The surveyor had this portion where my mouse is now, didn't show that correctly. And so we presented it as needing this side yard variance from this point to this point, when in reality, when you rotate the house, because the roof lines, and this line where I am, and I'm getting into the weeds a little bit, but this line right here is actually a second floor that's over top of an entry to the home back in here. It was always the same line, it just didn't count this little part here. So it sort of defeated the whole variance if, 2/3 of the wall was okay, but the remaining 1/3, particularly the second story, wasn't okay. I hope I answered that question. It's hard to follow on here because it was a survey error, really, and that's why the record was wrong on that.
What is the accessory building used for, if there, other than the shower?
So I actually, when I had the Board of Adjustment, I don't have it today. It's just wide open on the inside. It's for beach chairs, bikes, things like that. Stuff, garden things, storage, so, yeah. I mean, and there's not wallboard, there's just the exposed wood and beams and things, so, yeah.
Anything else?
Any other question?
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr.
Mike.
Strange.
Go ahead.
Yes. With regard to the structure itself, I believe in your introductory comments, you said the building is going to try to be preserved.
Yes.
And relocated. And in relocating it and rotating it, that means it's a new foundation. Technically, and unless I'm mistaken, when you build a new foundation, in theory, that which is on it has to meet the latest building code requirements. I'm assuming that with this house, that's probably problematic.
Oh, trust me, we've had those conversations.
Okay,
Yeah.
and the reason I'm raising that, and I think this is a very important issue, from the standpoint of preserving older structures, because I unfortunately have personal experience with this in Rehoboth Beach. 13 years ago, there was a different administration. I wasn't on the Planning Commission at that point. And the foundation on my house at that time, which was the second house built in Rehoboth Heights, in Rehoboth Beach, the foundation collapsed due to an anomaly of weather that year. And we wanted to put a new foundation and keep it. And 3 different attorneys basically said, there's no way on God's earth you'll get the variances you need to do this, because the house itself, the physical house, violated about a dozen different building code requirements. When the house was built in 1928, there were no building code requirements. There was no zoning code. I'm concerned that with this house, in order to maintain the house, you may require a lot of variances. And I guess what I'm suggesting is it's very unusual that if you go to the Board of Adjustment and you need 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 variances, that would get approved. I think in this particular case, it should be approved unless there is some issue that truly represents a public hazard to life and limb. Short of that, I think that every endeavor that you're making is the right thing to do to maintain vintage homes in Rehoboth Beach. When ours had to be torn down, my wife and I cried. That house.
And I've had that conversation offline about that.
And as you know what the house was originally on Stokely. That house was made of red oak. I always wondered why I couldn't drive anything into the walls.
I got it, trust me, I know.
Very interesting. However, I think in this particular case, this house deserves to be preserved and not, quite frankly, be totally screwed up by what the building code may require, and I would hope that every effort can be made, even if it does require several variances. I think you could probably get the support of the general public at that meeting to do that.
And that's why I laid that out sort of early on, that this hasn't been something that's been taken lightly. There has been that discussion back and forth with the builder and with the house mover. I don't know that we'll need any building code variances based on that conversation. That's a little bit different than a zoning code variance.
Right.
But I think Mr. Wagner's going into this eyes wide open about that based on those conversations, because this home is unlike yours and maybe mine, is substantially built.
Right.
I think it was a dog kennel in the basement, if I recall. And Mr. Wagner, if you have anything to add to that, because it was a hunting lodge. That's why.
Thank you. This is Mark Wagner again. So I wanted to be simpatico with Mr. Strange, and I think since the time of that determination for your home, there was an additional set of codes added to the Rehoboth Beach codes for international existing building codes. And so there's slightly different considerations, and one of the things that we'll be doing, we'll be making many improvements to the home and moving the door and changing some things like that. So those will all those new additions will be up to code, but the existing part is existing. So but as Mr. Strange also pointed out, or Commissioner Strange, excuse me, it's also important to make sure that there's no hazard. So if there are certain things that are identified that do need to be replaced, we certainly will do that. And as I've mentioned, I've spoken to the electrical, so Clendaniel's on the plumbing side, and it's been like 6 months, so I don't remember the name of the Apple Electric, and they've all been to the house. They've figured out what they can and can't do and determined that I've signed contracts for them to do that. So there's nothing that they see through their consultations with the city that there's any concerns about meeting code.
Thank you.
Ms. Gay?
I do think the accessory structure is an issue because it was stated very clearly at the Board of Adjustment meeting that, first of all, that was a planning commission decision to make because it has to do with the partitioning. And it was also stated that the Planning Commission does not partition a non-conforming lot, period. So I went back and looked at a number of partitionings back before it was administrative, and even when it was administrative. And typically, as with the project we did earlier, structures are already removed. If they're not already removed, it's generally a condition because the lots are being cleared. In this case, obviously, it's being preserved, which I think is wonderful. I think the whole plan for that is admirable. But the accessory structure is a conundrum because it may be non-conforming now, but we're creating a new lot, which by definition, I believe, creates a new nonconformity. But as I said, even typically, all structures have had to be removed. So if this one is to be retained, it would seem that it would have to be moved to be brought into compliance. I'm less concerned, I guess, about the shower, based on the history and the fact that it's been there from the beginning and predates the codes. It's the placement of it. And it would seem to me that we would want to condition that being moved to come into compliance.
So we've talked about that before, and we've looked at that. And I think there's not been consistency on that. And I'll give you an example. This is Stokely Street. Commissioner Strange might be familiar with this. It's in the 3rd block of Stokely Street. The reason I know this one is it's around the corner from where I am, and I was involved. The city, not necessarily the Planning Commission, but the city and Mr. Janis and Mr. Mandelis, anyway, I can't speak for Mr. Burns, has taken the position that as long as you're not altering that non-conforming structure, that it can remain. And this is an example. There's a shed, this house, there's a new house over here. I think it's 213. This house was there, it's not been touched, and there's the shed that was there forever. And you can see this was approved by the city of Rehoboth Beach with the shed there. I don't point that out to disagree with you, Ms. Gay. I just would say that it's at least been handled any number of different ways by the city. And in the past, you know, they've taken the position that if you're not altering it and it doesn't straddle a lot line, it can stay. So.
But I'm telling you that every time the Planning Commission has done it, and you've been there, I know you have, because I know some of these have been your cases. The structures have been, the condition has been that they're removed. And I don't know that we would ask for it to be removed, but to be relocated.
Mr. Janis, can you help us with this issue?
So I'd really not like to go into much detail about it, other than it's an existing non-conforming structure, and I kind of leave the determination up to you guys.
I have a question. I have a question, Mr. Janis.
Yes.
How is this similar to a retaining wall or dissimilar to a retaining wall that's existing non-conforming?
Certainly. So in this case, we have an occupancy. In the other case, there is no occupancy for a retaining wall.
So one's a structure that can have occupants, even if it doesn't,
That's right.
and the other ones cannot,
Right.
except squirrels.
Exactly.
Okay.
I'm not sure the code makes that distinction as the structure's a structure, and whether it's legally non-conforming or not. That means if that retaining wall and the setback was okay, it seems to me that a garage or a shed, I should say, and the setback's also okay. But that's up. Come up. So then, Mr. Wagner.
Mark Wagner again. So I will quote two cases. So one is the property at 36 Park Avenue, which it used to be there were two 36 Park Avenues, and that caused some confusion. We were 38, now we're 40. There were two 38s because there was repetitive numbers up in the second block, or third block. But regarding 36 Park Avenue, which is at the corner, or was at the corner of First and Park, they did something quite similar. They moved a house onto one part of the parcel, the westernmost piece, and there was a shed, which that actually was improved, but it remained where it was on the, not within the setback. So there's one case. And then the other one is currently under construction. That was done, 30 plus years ago. But the other one is currently under construction in the third block of Pennsylvania Avenue, where they lifted up the home, redid the foundation, and I think also that was non-conforming. And so by saying it was existing, they lifted it up, they put it back down so that a non-conforming still existed. But there is a whole shed at the back that's 2 stories and clearly is going to be used for occupancy. I will go on the record and say that we will never change what that is. We only want to have it for storage, and it will never become a secondary dwelling. So for what that's worth, we can build that into the provisions for the determination would be my suggestion.
Was the Stokely Street one a partitioning?
No, that was one that was administratively approved. Right, right. So lot separation, right. But my recollection is that that's been again, the policy of building inspectors and the city's attorneys anyway, because I know we've asked that question in the past.
Well,
Lot separation or
yeah, but
hearing.
when this ordinance first got referred back, this process first got referred back to us, I asked the city manager's office to give me a couple of samples of templates that they'd use for approval. And the one I got, and this is a template, been used for all of them, just says, within 6 months of this approval, all structures and improvements are to be removed. That's what it says. So I don't know whether this one was an exception. I don't know. But
Well,
again,
that assumes that there's a home straddling both lot lines, and obviously that would have to be removed because you have to remove the structures to get the two lots. Here, the lot, that sheds
understand that.
entirely within the lot that we're seeking to, recognize. So I think that's a different situation, Commissioner, because I don't disagree with that. You have 6 months. If we were tearing this house down, we'd have 6 months to tear it down, just like we have 6 months to get it moved off the lot line.
Mr. Stockdale?
Yeah, I was just going to ask a different question, not related to removal, but is it even possible to relocate the shed, given the placement of the trees?
Let me go back to the other one. I think the issue on the relocation is, well, you'd have to flip it 180 degrees because
But when that
the doors are on the one side, and if you moved it away from that, you'd be jammed up against trees. And the other thing, I don't know that shed itself structurally is all that movable.
I heard that at the meeting. You
Yeah.
all talked about that. Yeah. I think Mr. Wagner.
Yeah, Mr. Wagner, sure.
Yeah. Remember, we all talked about that.
This is Mark Wagner again. It would be possible to move it. It's made of the same iron oak construction, but it's just not practical or economical, frankly, and we wouldn't be able to move it like just away from the lot line. We'd have to put it in the front, which we just wouldn't do.
Anything else from the commissioners?
Public comment.
Any public?
Public comment?
One question, I might have missed it, but I'm not sure. The foundation for the house in a new location, are you anticipating going to having a basement?
Go to the microphone.
Mark Wagner again. We'll have a partial foundation. Currently, the existing structure has some crawl space and some basement. What we would do here is have the same combination of crawl space and basement, but it'd be just a different side of the house. Because the way we're moving the house, the crawl space that's part of the plan to preserve the trees, is to have crawl space along the lot line on the western side of the property, in the back near the large pine, and in the front near the large oak. And so the basement would be under the eastern part. So basically, if you draw a line up there from it kind of, can I point it out on the drawing?
Yeah, sure, please.
So basically, this part here would be crawl space, and this part would be basement. On this side, so it's much easier to do that.
All compliant with FAR, of course.
All right, any other members of the public have any comment? Yes, sir. Please come forward and state your name.
Patrick O'Donnell.
Please come to the microphone, sir.
And again, please just affirm or aver that what you're going to say.
Patrick O'Donnell, I own the property immediately behind the shed, 39 Oak, and I rise to be in support of the petition before you at the moment.
Yes, sir. Do you ratify and affirm that your statements here today are true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Is there a motion, or do I need to make a motion and let you debate it?
I guess I'd like to ask Susan. You know, the issue is, since this is a partitioning, is it your position that a shed that's within this rear yard setback is somehow makes us unable to approve the partitioning? And if so, what are you citing? So
Well, I do
I
think-
understand.
I do take their point about saving the tree. I do that. I think we just have to make it a condition that will allow this to happen. I'm just saying that historically, the Planning Commission has not partitioned has not carried a nonconformity across, that's all.
Except we just approved one.
Until today.
Okay.
But
Well, that's my confusion.
Let me just add one thing, if I may, because I think it's relevant as a matter of law and under this city's code, that determinations, and Mr. Robertson, I'm sure you'll agree, but you can weigh in for yourself, and same with you, Mr. City Solicitor, that in this town, in this city, determinations of a legal existing nonconforming use or structure or status are made by the building inspector, and appeals from any such determination are made to the Board of Adjustment. I think that is relevant to this discussion. Whether you have a view on that, Mr. Robertson.
Yeah, I don't disagree with the statement of the code. I just know the conversation that Commissioner Gay and I had a moment ago, and we just talked about from the hearing before. You know, I don't think there's any dispute that the shed itself is legally nonconforming. It's the shower, and then the issue is, does the partition or the lot separation, does that impact the legal nonconformity of that shed? You know, that's really the issue, and that sort of puts it back with you all. One thing I do want to make clear, we don't want this thing denied over the shed. I want to make that 100% clear, yeah. It's part of the historic property, you know, and I mean, reasonable minds can disagree, but there's situations where this has occurred in the past, you know, and it seems like it's the right thing to do here would be to preserve it. And we also have, I would add the testimony from the person who just said they live behind
Right,
it.
yes, I think that's important.
Yeah, who stated that they don't have any objection to it, so.
Yeah.
And it's literally their backyard lot line.
I have a question going to that. If I followed the nuances here, the distinction we were making about this structure and the wall was that this structure could be habitable. Is that correct? I mean, can we, I mean, does that problem get cured and addressed more fully if it's recognized as a non-conforming structure that is non-habitable?
It can't have two dwelling units on a property anyway, so it can't be habitable.
Okay, gotcha.
matter what.
Thank you.
And maybe, Mr. Janis, can you just reaffirm for the record and for the Planning Commission, what is your determination with regard to whether the use of the garage is currently legally existing non-conforming or not, or whether its existing status was negated by installing the shower?
Right, so the use is that of a shed. It's of a storage structure, if you will. The whole issue of the bathroom was something that was brought to my attention when I had to go out to make an inspection of the site. Obviously, if I see something, I have to say something, and that's what led to the discovery of this bathroom. With the abandonment, and Mr. Stockdale, to address your concerns, this structure was not registered as a conforming secondary dwelling unit in 1989 when we forced all the structures to be registered at that time. So this structure could not become a secondary dwelling unit.
Thank you.
And one thing, if I could add, because I don't want there to be any misconceptions, there's not a bathroom in there.
Right, yeah,
It's
yeah,
just
it's
a
just a
shower.
shower,
It's an
right.
outdoor shower that
Right.
it has, it's indoor. It's
Indoor.
I
It's not
literally, if you
outdoor,
go
it's
there in
an-
the summer, it's kind of, like I said, it's ingenious. The door's always open and there's a shower curtain across where the door would go, and you just, instead of having the shower outside of the structure that you walk into the outdoor shower that's inside the structure. That makes sense.
Mr. Strange?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think in this particular case, we have some linguistic vagueness, which is bothering everybody. But I don't think we should allow that to get in the way of a genuine attempt for historic preservation, especially in light of all the destruction that's occurred around town over the last few years, and now a very valiant attempt to maintain something that's a part of Rehoboth. So I'm inclined, do you want a motion on this, or is there still discussion?
I have Ms. Davis yet
Okay.
to speak,
go ahead.
if I can.
I was just going to refer all of us to the Board of Adjustments Notice of Decision for the prior case, which was issued on April 24th, 2023, which states that the applicant appeals from the city's assertion that the partial change of use of the garage to a shower facility is legally significant and disqualifies the structure's legal nonconforming status. Ultimately, however, it was clarified by the city that without the shower, the structure is legal nonconforming and may retain in its current position. With the shower, a variance would be deemed necessary.
So there's our solution.
But they didn't approve the variance, right? For the
Well,
shower.
it was an appeal, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But, well, no,
It was both.
It was a variance, yeah, it
both.
was two
It was an
Okay,
appeal
right.
of the determination as well as a variance request. And the Board of Adjustment did not render a determination on either because it was split
No,
2-2.
that's right.
But
that's
that was the city's position, which was not overturned.
it was not
by the
overturned.
Right,
So we do
correct.
have to deal with that, right?
Which is what we've been saying, that it's not the structure, but the use.
Right. So how do we deal with that in our, how do we deal with that in our approval?
We make the approval conditioned upon removing the shower
Exactly.
and the shower curtain.
Exactly.
Shower-
Which I believe is consistent, and I believe that's consistent with Mr. Janice's
Right, oh,
report
yes, yes.
and recommendations.
Okay,
That's correct.
I can live with that, that's fine.
All right. I'll make the motion if no one else will. Mr. Strange, would you please?
No, I was going to say, I think that I was going to make a motion for approval, subject to that the shower and shower curtain are removed, and that and then the accessory building, I don't think I have to say anything beyond that.
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Again, please remember to state the reasons for your vote.
Commissioner Davies.
I would request that you start with somebody else
Somebody else.
each
Move down the
time. I
line.
think
I'll
that's
keep moving.
parliamentary procedure.
Right. So that I can keep track of things, I'll start with myself. I will vote in favor of the motion. When this action is completed, we will have 2 conforming lots. I especially appreciate the effort being made by the owner to respect the history of the totality of the property, including the accessory structure, and not the least of which being the number of trees on the property. Commissioner Ellison.
I support the motion, and I just want to commend, Mr. Wagner and his family for not only their desire to maintain the structure with historic value and such on a very historic street, which has its own unique characteristics, and also your desire to save as many trees as possible. I think it's a wonderful scheme, and I look forward to seeing it happen.
Commissioner Gay.
And I support the motion for all the reasons that you, Commissioner Dewey, and Commissioner Ellison just said. I think it's a wonderful historic preservation, and I think we reached a good decision on the shower.
Commissioner Hunter is not present. Commissioner Stewart?
I support the motion for the reasons my colleagues have stated, and with the, especially with the caveat that the shower and its attendant accessories will be removed.
Commissioner Stockdale?
I support the motion also, and thank you for your efforts to save this property. My wife and I walk by your home all the time when we walk our dog, and it's a beautiful house. I've admired it from afar on many occasions, and I salute you for preserving the home.
Commissioner Strange?
Based on what all my fellow commissioners have said and the facts and evidence, I support fully the application and vote in favor.
Commissioner Davies?
Yes, I vote for the motion, and am delighted that we got the shower shed issues resolved to everyone's satisfaction.
Commissioner Bryan?
Yes, I vote yes. I support the motion. I think it's noble, what you're doing. And subject to the condition of concerning the shower. So I fully support, and the application's approved.
Just with respect to both this application and the prior, just to be clear, the effective date of the rulings will be the date that a written resolution consistent with the decision today is issued, which hopefully will be early next week.
Yes, we're trying to establish a process what everyone will be aware of and can rely on in terms of when the commission acts.
I would say on this one, take your time, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Get plans approved by Matt to move the house. The more time we have, the better. But no,
That may be the first time you've ever made that request.
yeah, well,
Houses be moved during the demolition, during the period when demolitions can't be, but they can move during
They
that
may
time.
not.
Oh, they can't? Oh, so they're
may
not
not.
going to be able to do it between May and September?
Correct.
If they don't get it done by May? Oh.
yeah, and just nuts and bolts wise, we filed back in November,
Yeah.
and just thinking where we'd
Right.
be, we may be back for an extension, we have the right to
Oh.
ask for that, but
Well,
just because of the demolition prohibition during the
Right,
summer,
okay,
we're
yeah,
going to be
yeah.
right up on that. That's why I said, take your time on the
I'm not
written
sure
decision.
I'm not sure the extension would come from us. It would come from the Board of Adjustment. Well, anyway,
No, there's,
Okay.
whatever.
all right.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Is this an extra copy? Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, sir, for your
I
application.
thought they could actually move it.
Thank you very
during the
much, appreciate
demolition.
it.
If that time period was told.
Mr. Wagner?
Yeah.
Save everybody time.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's take a 5-minute break,
Oh, yeah,
if we can.
read my mind.
Um,
Is this one yours as well?
It is.
Vince, okay. Mr. Janis.
I presume we're on 54 Kent.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. And the third time, hello again. Before you is application number 1223-08, the lot partitioning for 54 Kent Street. An application has been submitted to partition the following one parcel into two parcels, 54 Kent Street, AKA lots 52 and 54 of Rehoboth Beach Camp Meeting Association subdivision, tax map number 334-14.17-43.00. The parcel is located within the R1 Residential District. Lots 52 and 54 form a 100 by 84, an 8,400 square foot parcel. The applicant desires to partition the parcel into two 50 by 84, 4,200 square foot parcels. The applicant has applied for and secured a variance, application number 1023-10, to allow an encroachment of 0.4 feet over the required side setback line. To achieve conformance, the applicant shall remove an existing deck and screen porch attached to the northeast of the existing single-family dwelling. The applicant shall also remove the shed existing to the southeast of the property, as the accessory structure is not permitted without the accompanying main dwelling use. Should the Planning Commission grant approval, a condition should be set that the structure is modified as proposed. Once the modification has occurred, the Planning Commission may then require an inspection and further documentation to show that the conditions have been met and that the parcels may be created. Again, I insert 236-8.1 in for my report. I will not read it again. I have determined that this application reverts lot lines to the original layout as laid forth by the forming of the Rehoboth Beach Camp Meeting Association. If approved, the parcels will require recordation with the Recorder of Deeds of Sussex County, Delaware. After the deed has been recorded, the applicant shall submit a live, signed, and sealed survey to finalize and address the parcel created. Again, the City of Rehoboth Beach Building and Licensing Department has reviewed the application and has determined that the submitted materials are appropriate for Planning Commission review. The city acknowledges that there may be issues identified in this review and that the Planning Commission may identify additional criteria that may need to be corrected or revised in future submissions. Consequently, the applicant's rights have not vested by virtue of this determination.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Again, thank you, Matt. I'll just supplement with a few other just contextual procedural observations. The applicant filed the present application to partition the lot on December 21, 2023. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You referenced the ordinance 092301 adopted by the Board of Commissioners on September 15, 2023. Again, we don't need to repeat the procedural aspects, but there was also on September 15, 2023, another ordinance 092302 adopted by the Board of Commissioners, where the commissioners, among other things, deleted in its entirety former City Code Section 270-46.1, including former subsection D thereof. And since September 15, 2023, the Rehoboth Beach Board of Commissioners has not enacted new legislation that would reinstate the language that formerly appeared, or a variant of the language that formerly appeared as City Code Section 270-46.1. Mr. Janis, you submitted a building inspector memorandum to the chair of the Planning Commission on, see if I get my dates right this time, February 13 of this year, is that correct?
That's correct.
And again, the Board of Adjustment decision that you refer to, the written decision of the Board of Adjustment, which is case number 1023-10, that was issued on March 5, just a few days ago. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm still Vince Robertson from Barkowski, Kirk and Swayze.
Can you just
Are
play?
you gonna give us visuals?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, you know
Thank
me, I like pictures, so. Ms.
you just-
Womack, if you could turn
Just
the.
play the tape from the last application?
No, this one's the same, but a little different.
Preservation, different.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, and thanks for pointing out that we need these screens on. I am here with Chip Andre, his wife Jane. They were both actually at a funeral yesterday in New England. His wife is still there for the celebration of life aspect of it, but Mr. Andre, Chip came back for today for the hearing. As shown on the picture, this is another older home. This one, when we were doing research on it, and I'm going to read a letter, and I read it at the Board of Adjustment, because it's fascinating, actually, and it was suggested at the Board of Adjustment that we donated it to the Rehoboth Beach Museum. This is the property that shows the house and the lot at 52, the house and the lot at 54. This just shows 52 Kent Street. This is the letter. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there's a couple lines that are just fantastic. And it's from Mary Pyle. It's February 20th, 1977. There's only really been two owners of this home, the Piles and the Andres. I'm going to read a couple paragraphs. She says, "Due to my illness, including hospitalization, I have been unable to give much consideration to your notice to taxpayers concerning the appraised value of my property at 54 Kent Street in Rehoboth Beach for assessment and taxation purposes. You say that your, quote, property records, close quote, indicate that said property has a value of $41,700 and that you propose to tax it on the basis of 50% or $20,850. My little cottage is very old. It was the first building for any purpose erected there or nearby. It faced only a dirt street and sidewalk. No capital improvements have been made to it. Only needed repairs have been made so as to render it occupiable. It has no normal bathroom. It has a simple shower and a toilet. Consequently, I should be very grateful if you will please let me know promptly, using the enclosed return envelope, upon what basis and upon whose imagination you arrived at the value of $41,700. How did such data get into your records without competent and personal inspection?" Now, that's neither here nor there, I admit, but it's a hoot. So anyhow, I wanted to read it into the record. But it does show that there's some history to this house. It was the first house that was built on Kent Street back when it was an unpaved road. And we will probably give it to the Rehoboth Beach Museum. We only have a photocopy of it from the archived records. But there is let me back up. The city's always treated this as two lots. It was created as two lots, as Mr. Janis mentioned, by the Rehoboth Cap Meeting Association, and it's treated as Lot 52 and 54 therein as referenced in the deed. Lot 52 and 54, they've always been taxed separately by the city. This is really unusual, it strikes me, in terms of what we see, come to the city on these lots. Like the Wagner one, the one before that, all of them, they're one lot. It's a 100 by 100 lot or whatever, 84 by 100 lot, one tax bill. Here, the city has treated it time immemorial as two lots, Lot 52 and Lot 54, and taxed them separately. This is the 2023 tax bill, and you can see that it's not the clearest, but $433 was paid on Lot 54, and $360 some odd was paid on Lot 52. This is just another record from the city's Munis records, which is their internal records for all properties within the city of Rehoboth Beach. You can see on this one that it identifies Lot 54 as one property. It actually has a parcel ID number internally with the city of 1941. It has the designation of the property vacant lot, and it says no. This is Lot 52, another parcel ID within the city, 4930, and this says vacant lot, yes, 52 being the one where the house is. I didn't want to inundate you with tax bills. This just happens to be the 2015 real estate tax bill. And again, it shows that, and Mr. Andre got these from the city. That's the city staff initial on the bottom. The one is for 52 and the one's for 54, showing everything that was paid each year. On the city zoning map, It's also treated as 2 lots. You can see Lot 52 is here. The X just marks, what we're talking about. Lot 52 is here. Lot 54 is here. So in this context, this is really unusual that the city, for all intents and purposes, have always treated this as 2 lots. I think there's an argument that could be made that we walked into the city because the city's records show it's 2 lots. If we went in with 2 separate surveys, somebody would pull it up on their Munis system and say, Lot 54 is a lot, Lot 52 is a lot, stamp the survey for Lot 52, stamp the survey for Lot 54, we'd go our merry way. We had the issue with the variance, so we had to go through that. Obviously, before September 15th, we'd almost do the same thing. We'd come in with a new survey, take it to, through Ann to the city manager. They would look at their munis and tax records, say it's 2 lots. It's the way they were originally plotted by the city of Rehoboth Beach. We're going to recognize the 2 lots. The city manager would sign the affidavit, stamp the one survey, stamp the other. We'd go our merry way after we recorded them. As we just talked about, on September 15th, we had ordinances number 092301 and 092302. I think there's an important distinction to understand with that, though. That just shifted the process from the city manager approving these to you. That didn't affect the substance of it. And when you read that in the whereas clauses, it talks about where this process happens. It happens either with the city manager, which was eliminated, and then it shifted to you all. And actually, if you watch the video of that, Mayor Mills even says that, because the first thing they did was got rid of the city manager process for it, and he actually stated, well, now we have to do something more because we're in limbo. We don't have any way to approve these since we just got rid of the city manager's administrative authority. And so they did Ordinance 02, which put it in front of you all. All this I want to make sure, because I wanted to make sure that we understood this completely, because there are existing lots that were treated as existing lots by the city. And I'm going to get to this later. Reached out to the city solicitor to make sure that was his understanding. We have an email to that effect from the city solicitor at the time. It was confirmed by the building official in his report that we heard today that it's returning or recognizing the original plotted lots. And it was also recognized in the Board of Adjustments decision that these are the original lots laid out in the Rehoboth Camp Meeting Association. So here we are after all that. So with that, I want to go into a little bit of the merits of the application. This is the survey of the property. You can see there's the 1.5-story dwelling that you saw in that picture that's on Lot 54. There's a deck and a screen porch that will be removed. That obviously, straddles that lot line, so we have to get rid of that. We got the variance from the Board of Adjustment, kind of like we did in Wagner, for this super minor encroachment down the easterly side of the lot. And you can't really see it on the small scale of this, but the shed, the deck, and the porch, they all have to be removed. You can't have something on one lot that's an accessory structure that's not accessory to a main dwelling. Since the main dwelling's on Lot 54, you can't have accessory structures on Lot 52, and we grasp that. One thing that we need to point out is that if the existing lots are not recognized, kind of like we talked about on Wagner, it's likely that this home at some point would be torn down because, a 100 by 84-foot lot is economically upside down to keep this small home on it. Again, Mr. Andre has the same outlook that Mr. Wagner did about preserving this home that goes back to when Kent Street was a dirt road. There's just not the economics in properties in Rehoboth Beach to maintain a 1.5-story bungalow on a property where you have a separately taxed lot that has nothing on it. If it was to be sold at some point, and I'm not making that as a threat, I don't come here and threaten that, but that's just the logic of the situation. This house would be gone. And the other thing is, it would be a great big house that straddles both of these properties. It would be merged for zoning purposes that would be out of character with what else is on Kent Street. So instead, with the approval or the recognition of these pre-existing lots, the city gets Lot 54 and continues to tax that just like it always has. The city continues to have Lot 52, is able to continue to receive property taxes on that. And at some point, if it's built upon, the city would get building permit fees, transfer taxes if and when it's sold, and presumably an increased assessed value with the new home on it. As I mentioned, the Board of Adjustment has already heard this, and that was back in November, and that decision was unanimously granted. I just point out here the findings of the board. The property is considered a single parcel by Sussex County, but the city's reflected as 2 lots with a dwelling that straddles an internal lot line between 52 and 54 Kent Street. Together, the lots have 100 feet of road frontage and 84 feet of depth. The 2 lots are as they were originally plotted by the city. So again, that's a finding of the Board of Adjustment. Down here, the highlighted part just confirms that it was unanimously approved. So this is a blow-up of the 2 properties, as we mentioned. Each will have 50 feet of frontage. Each will have 84 feet of depth, just like every other lot on this side of Kent Street, frankly, every side of Kent Street and Sussex Street, and I think Cookman Street, the one behind there. It's compliant with FAR. Lot 52 is vacant. Lot 54 is compliant with FAR, given the relatively small size of the house. Lot coverage is compliant. Lot 52, obviously, is all natural once the shed and the deck is removed. And Lot 54 is compliant. With the Board of Adjustment approval, the setbacks are compliant. We don't have any accessory structures that we have to deal with on this one. No showers and shower curtains, thankfully. So that's all compliant with code and subject to the variance. The parking will be relocated. Obviously, Lot 52 won't need parking unless and until somebody at some point decides to build a house there. But Lot 54 will have parking relocated to the front. And we've done that in such a way, and we've actually shared this with Matt separately. It would be 2 off-street parking in the spaces in the front to preserve this 24-inch tree here and this 36-inch tree here in between the 2, because those are fairly massive trees on that property. The good news is that we're not touching any of the other trees. We don't have to rotate a house like we did on the last one. So all the rest of the trees remain all around both properties. And one thing we realized when we were at the Board of Adjustment on Lot 52, I mean, again, when that's developed, it'll have to comply with whatever tree code is in effect at that time. But looking at the picture that I showed at the very beginning of this, it looks like it's a forest on Lot 52. But for the most part, the larger trees, the larger diameter trees, as it turns out, are outside of the setback areas or close to them. Like this 34-inch tree, that's sort of right here on the front corner. But like we have these 30-inch trees and this 32-inch tree, 27-inch tree, and this 34-inch tree, like I mentioned. So most of those will be preserved. So I've talked to Mr. Mehta. I understand that there's, and he brought it up at the beginning, that there's a concern about whether these lots are compliant with code. And I would point out, just as I said before, the city has taxed them as separate lots from day one. If they're not 2 lots, I don't know how the city could reach that conclusion, but it begs the question of whether that money should be refunded to Mr. Andre. And I would point out that 236-8.1 of the city code identifies that lots being returned to their original configuration are permitted and with only 1 planning commission hearing. That's exactly what we are asking to do today, return them to their original configuration. There's a distinction. We're not asking to create new lots. I understand that. If I was thinking about this, there's just not that many vacant properties in Rehoboth, and I'm going to use one that's notorious, but in the Ocean Bay Mart property, you know, that would be a property that would be a clean slate. Could you come in there and create lots that are 50 by 84 there? No, because you're creating a new lot. Here we are recognizing existing lots, and there's a distinction there. And this is Mr. Janis's report that he issued, and along with the Board of Adjustment and that decision I referenced before, he says, I have determined that this application reverts lot lines to the original layout as laid forth by the forming of the Rehoboth Beach Camp Meeting Association. As I mentioned, we checked with Mr. Mandelis, who was city solicitor at the time, you know, and I asked him to confirm that question, and he said, it's on the bottom of this. Sorry, I missed this, Vince. Attached is the ordinance, which is intended to make the partition of lots to their original configuration a 1-step process, which we're here today. So no, nothing in the new ordinance is intended to make a parcel that was previously a candidate for partitioning no longer a candidate. The change was intended to discontinue the administrative approval approvals and have all applications go before the Planning Commission. And as I mentioned, the Board of Adjustment did not require any additional variances and recognized that the lots are separate lots. So I just want to run through this sort of logically, because I did this in my mind, and I think it's important for you all to hear. The lots originated with the Rehoboth Camp Meeting Association, and they were recorded. So they are existing lots. They exist. If you look at the definition of a lot in the city of Rehoboth Beach, this comes right from the city zoning code. It's a parcel of land, et cetera, created by descriptions on a subdivision or recorded survey map. That's what we have, going back to that Rehoboth Camp Meeting Association plot that Mr. Janis and everybody else has recognized. The lots have been separately taxed and has been taxed as long as anyone knows. The city treats them as separate parcels now. We are not creating new lots at all. We are recognizing existing lots that were merely combined for zoning purposes. The underlying lots never went away. And again, the city is recognized this by taxing them separately. As I mentioned, this is in conformity with the definition in the code. It's what's contemplated in Mr. Janis's report. And as I mentioned before with the Ocean Bay Mart situation, there's a difference between creating brand new lots and recognizing existing lots like we're here for today. With regard to those two ordinances that were adopted in September, Mr. Mendelis and I had a conversation earlier today, and we kind of came up with a term or a phrase that summarizes it. All those ordinances did was shift the process. They didn't change whether you're entitled to recognition of pre-existing lots. It shifted it from the city manager to the Planning Commission. And you know, that was recognized in the whereas clause of 92301, whereas the mayor and commissioners of the city of Rehoboth Beach desire to create a mechanism for the city of Rehoboth Beach Planning Commission to efficiently approve the separation and consolidation of certain lots. Again, lots being the important term, that's what we have, pre-existing lots that have been in existence for 100 years. I would also say this, you know, you have to look at this both ways. We're asking that the city recognize the existing lots, that it's taxed forever as separate properties. I think a counter argument could be made. What would that do if you don't recognize those existing lots and you wanted to merge two of them, you know, which could come up? If you say, well, we can't recognize two existing lots because they're not deep enough, they're non-conforming lots somehow, then I think the other problem would happen that you couldn't merge those two lots because you'd be merging two non-conforming lots. And nobody thinks that makes any sense. Here, we're just going back to what was plotted 100 years ago. We're asking those to be recognized as they've been recognized and taxed forever in the city of Rehoboth Beach. So with that, that concludes my presentation. However, I would like Chip to come forward and just make sure that everything I said is true and correct to the best of your knowledge. I think you need to be sworn in, though, by Mr. Bryan.
Yes. Do you swear and affirm that all the information and testimony you give here today will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief, and that what your attorney has also advised us is true and correct?
Yes, that's correct. I'm Charles Andre, by the way, so nice to see you all.
Do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I mean, it is, people look at us and they say, you're the second owners of this cottage, and we are. Mary Pyle was a delightful person that we got to know, and was sort of our adopted grandmother almost. She had no other family, so she left all of her personal belongings with us. Some of it was quite humorous, and poker chips and hats for church, and she had been a member of this community for quite a while. But we, in fact, stayed in touch with her for many, many years until she did eventually pass, but not after taking down a mugger in Baltimore City who was trying to take her purse. But so she was quite something. So we have great affection for Rehoboth and for the property. And the goal, I'm 68, my wife likewise is 68, this was always part of our retirement plan. But as we got closer, we wanted to take the situation more precisely, to use it as two lots, and because people who would like to buy this property with a small little old house, they're going to tear it down in 5 minutes. So it may eventually get torn down, but it's our goal is to keep it as long as we can and to allow this division to occur back to the Rehoboth Beach rules and regulations from the Camp Society. Any further questions you all have?
Let me check. Yes, anyone, any questions of the applicant? Mr. Robertson, what's your view about the existing shed? You may have touched on that, and I may have forgotten.
This is not a situation like we just dealt with Wagner. That shed's coming down. So everything, I think, and well, I can go back. The shed comes down, the deck comes off, the screen porch comes off. So no houses are getting spun around though, so.
Okay, and I have a question. So the Board of Adjustment decision in the 80s that you have attached here as your supplemental,
I don't think that's been referenced yet.
That hasn't been referenced yet. We haven't talked about that yet.
okay. So what Board of Adjustment decision are you speaking about?
I'm speaking of the one that we did in whenever it was.
You said September, I think?
Yeah, no, so,
November, I think.
yeah, actually it was, well, it just issued March 5th.
Are you or is the applicant aware that in 1986, this property came before both the Planning Commission and the Board of Adjustment for the issue of a partitioning? And the Planning Commission basically tabled it, and the Board of Adjustment denied the variance into non-conforming lots on the basis that there was no substantial hardship had been demonstrated by the applicant in 1986. So are you aware of that Board of Adjustment decision?
And I am not, and the reason is that we specifically were asked about that. It came up during the Board of Adjustment when we were in front of them. The decision was in March, but when we were in front of them back in November, thank you. And so we looked in the city's records on this property. I specifically went and reviewed the city's files, and there's no reference to a Planning Commission hearing nor a Board of Adjustment decision. So I don't know where that came from, but it's not in the city's records anywhere. I'd like to know where it came from, who found it, because when we looked at the building and licensing records, it's not there, and we did a FOIA request for that.
And maybe it's possible that the building and licensing records don't care, I mean, that they don't get merged, but it's in the minutes for about 5 different planning commission meetings and 1 or 2 Board of Adjustment meetings. It's quite an extensive discussion.
Well, that would have been super helpful to know when we asked the city and
Well,
reviewed the city's
so
file.
the reason I'm asking this
And it would have
is-
been helpful to know, Mr. Mehta, if
Got it
you
a
and
few
I
days ago, too.
had, somebody had raised
Well,
that beforehand,
it's,
since we did the outreach.
I just became aware of it recently, so
Is
that's why.
Is it linked to the city's website?
Probably Mary Pyle.
No, but I mean, it's not even on the agenda for today's
Oh,
hearing.
it's not.
It's in the supplemental.
Well, no, I don't think it was posted, right? No, it's not, it was just sent to us.
Okay.
It wasn't posted.
So who
Can
sent
I
it
ask
to
the
you
question
all?
I was asking originally?
Go ahead.
Can you describe this latest Board of Adjustment variance you
Yeah,
received?
I'll
Thank
get
you.
back to that. So the Board of Adjustment, it was kind of like the Wagner application, and it was for, see, we're 0.2 over right here. It's just for this, down this setback line. It's 0.4 here and 0.2 over. So it just runs right down the setback line right here.
The variance was granted.
And the variance was granted, yeah, unanimously. And it's kind of hard to
It's
say.
interesting.
And the porch is
because
coming
it's,
off, right?
Yeah, the
is
porch
coming
and
off.
the deck's coming off.
Right. The porch and the deck are coming off. But then there was
So is it your thought that the underlying premise based upon which the Board of Adjustment gave a variance was that these were 2 conforming lots?
Yes, because, they wouldn't have recognized that internal setback line had they not thought that that was the case.
Trying to,
Yeah, no, understood.
to hear you say that.
Yeah, no, yeah. And in fact, they recognized them in their decision as being 2 pre-existing lots.
But the more recent Board of Adjustment variance, the applicant did not specifically ask for a variance regarding minimum lot size, did you?
No, because we did not need to.
Well, you did not ask for it, and they did not.
This isn't an interrogation.
No,
answering
I'm
the
just,
question. Yeah.
it's a Q&A, and so
I know,
you didn't ask for a lot size variance, right?
We didn't ask because we did not need to ask, because they were pre-existing lots that the city recognized and is taxed for 100 years.
So in view, if I were to make a representation to you that there is a Board of Adjustment decision from 1986 following a a planning commission decision to basically, or hear meeting minutes to table the issue of a partitioning, and that the Board of Adjustment decided in 1986 not to grant the variance. We're here right now. Do you want to take that under advisement, or do you want to continue today?
Let me give a preface on this. It's very unfortunate that I'm learning about a planning commission action from 1980 and a Board of Adjustment action from 1980 for the first time at the hearing. And it's not for lack of due diligence. I mean, we reached out to the city when this came up at the Board of Adjustment hearing to see if there was anything that happened. I talked to the city staff. We did a FOIA request, physically got the file for this property because we wanted to know, was there anything that had previously been done by the Planning Commission or the Board of Adjustment? And it's empty. I mean, the file's not empty. It's silent as to anything before it goes back forever with building permits, with everything else. And every other file in the city, if there's been something that's been granted, because that is building and licensing's file on the property. It doesn't say anything, just hold on. It doesn't say anything on Munis about there being variances.
Right, because it didn't go back that far.
It's not embedded in the city's agenda that there was a decision. Again,
I just have a question. So was your FOIA request only for the building and licensing records? You didn't ask about even it came up at the Board of Adjustment that there'd been these hearings,
but there's
right?
not, Mr. Janice, is there separate files for the Board of Adjustment
Yes.
versus the city building and licensing records?
Yeah.
Yes, there are.
And
When I
planning
talked to
commission.
the staff and asked if there was anything that had been filed with the Board of Adjustment or the Planning Commission, and was told there was not, I'm just frustrated that I'm getting surprised with this today at this hearing.
Well,
and it was, I mean, it seems like it was.
There's no malice. It is what it is. And so I'm making the representation to you now. And so the question is, do you want to take that under advisement before proceeding today? Regardless of what happened or what the scope of any prior FOIA requests are, we'll be happy to share with you, just like you share with us something that I wasn't aware of before today. I'm happy to share with you something that I became recently aware of.
Somebody was aware of it before today. And it seems like if we had known about it, and the commission had known about it, and the public had known about it through it being posted on the agenda, we would probably at least been able to get to this on the merits today. I have to tell you, though, since I don't know about it and it's being brought to my attention for the first time, even though it seems like people on the Planning Commission know about it, but I didn't, I think we have to ask for a continuance, just so we can get a look at that.
Just learned about it a few days ago.
Where did you all hear from? I mean, if you don't mind me asking, where did you learn about it from?
It was mentioned at that Board of Adjustment meeting.
Well, it was mentioned that we thought there was a prior action. Nobody cited to anything. That's why we looked to see if there was and asked for any records about that. And you asked about what my FOIA request was. I don't remember the specific language of it, but it was in the relation to that. Has anything happened with regard to the Board of Adjustment or the Planning Commission?
Huh.
So,
Well, we were sent it.
who sent it to you all?
We're happy to get it. I received it from, I guess, indirectly from Ann, but. But let me just follow up on a couple. So if you're going to, which I think is quite frankly the right course, if you want to take a continuance and think about it. But as you continue to think about it, I have to respond to a couple of the things that you mentioned, Mr. Robertson. The fact is that although in September of 2023, although the Board of Commissioners did intend to move consolidations and partitionings from the city manager to the Planning Commission, it is incorrect to say that the merits didn't change. The merits of the language that I think you're relying on, which was former Section 270-46.1D, was stricken from the code in September of 2023 and has not been reinstated. Or any equivalent thereof has not been reinstated. And you have applied, at least presently, maybe you want to reconsider, but you have come to this submitted application that's before the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission doesn't make the rules, doesn't enact laws, it does not grant variances, it applies the law that exists. And the law that exists right now does not include the language that I think you're relying on, which is former 270-46.1 D.
So
With regard, hold on. With regard to your, extraneous statements with Mr. Mandalis, he is not currently the city solicitor. That's hearsay. But he also doesn't make the laws. He doesn't enact the laws, okay? The Board of Commissioners enacts. The Board of Commissioners enacts the law.
I don't think you can ignore what the city solicitor.
Mr. Robertson, please stop interrupting.
Board of Commissioners enacts the laws that this planning commission has to follow. So I wanted to make that very clear. So I do think if your client, I don't want to speak for you, but if you want to take a recess to consider this new information.
No, I think what we'd like to do is if we could table it, because I've not seen it. I don't want to recess, and I know you have a long agenda. We want to see what those decisions say. I stand by what I said. This is very frustrating to me. I hope you can appreciate that. That apparently there was this information floating around that we didn't know about. But I do want to make a point, Mr. Mehta, because I think we're losing track of what's relevant as far as this request to recognize existing lots. I agree with what you're saying. Perhaps if you were taking 50 by 100 lots that didn't previously exist, that met all provisions of the code, we couldn't go to the city manager and get that approved. That's not what we're doing today. We're recognizing existing lots that the city has taxed for decades. They're the two lots, 54 and 52, that are recognized by the city as existing lots. I bring this up because what hasn't changed is section 270.22 of the code, and I think this is where, Mr. Mehta, you're maybe going to go with this, that we don't meet the requirements for a new lot. We are not creating a new lot. We are recognizing existing lots within the city of Rehoboth Beach, and there's an important distinction between that. As I mentioned, no new lot shall be created, nor shall an existing lot be changed in size or shape unless each new or changed lot goes through this. We're not creating a new lot. We're not changing a lot. We're simply asking, as I said at the beginning, I'm not even 100% sure why we're here, because the city recognizes these as two lots already. I'm perfectly fine with you all saying, we'll just go downstairs and get it stamped.
Because they were merged by use. I mean, that's...
But that's a zoning merger. That's not creating a new lot.
Right, but in answer to your question of why you're here, that's what the commissioners talked about for 6 months. And that's why it comes back to us, because the record keeping between the county and the city was confused because we recognize merge by use, whereas other jurisdictions do not. So that's the whole reason that we go through the petitioning process, is because the city recognizes mergers by use.
And I agree with that. There's a disconnect there. Yeah. But that process addressed two things. It addressed the creation of new lots, which is 270.22. It also addressed the recognition of existing lots, which is what we're asking to do.
Yeah, and I think there are probably multiple people here. I know you're frustrated by the previous cases that were found, and I'm frustrated by the fact that that language was stricken from the code and is not available to us today, because we've recommended that it go back in. And among our Chapter 236 changes, we have specifically word for word recommended that it go back in, but it does not exist today.
No, well, I just wanted to make that distinction because of what we're asking for. I don't want you to think we're asking for new lots, because that opens a whole can of worms.
I get it.
But because it's recognizing existing lots, it's a different pathway. But because we're all, and I know there's people here that live in the neighborhood, we're all just hearing about these old decisions from 1980 that may not even have the same code provisions in place 40 years ago that exist today. Let's table it so we can all get a look at that and see what's going on.
Mr. Strange.
Yeah, I'm not an attorney, but I am an engineer. But what concerns me here is true linguistic vagueness when we have very exactitude with regard to new lots, merged lots, old lots. And when you have something that's been this way for, apparently there's agreement for about at least 40 years, and it's been taxed as individual lots. I'm wondering if we're getting into a semantic hell here, because the existing elements of the various components of the codes don't sync. And I don't think that the applicant should have to suffer when, as a practical matter, and I will defer to our counsel, but I'm inclined to accept the I don't want to use the term legal definition, but the definitions that have been available to us and the way these lots were taxed as lots, I think we're into the never land of linguistic vagueness, which I don't think is of benefit to the city or to the applicant. So I'm inclined to accept this application in favor of it, but I'm wondering if in doing that, does that in itself create a legal problem for the applicant by accident? If in fact it may violate something that was done 40 years ago, which I find incomprehensible, but I will.
Well, I don't disagree with that, because we have the other issue that, the Board of Adjustments had this subsequent decision which, because I haven't seen the prior one or whatever went through the Planning Commission, that's a finding, they're a quasi-judicial body that has said that these are two lots that are recognized by the city of Rehoboth. So I don't, it seems like that would supersede whatever the board did in 1980. I just don't know,
It renders what they did last fall sort of, if they were denied in 86, the partitioning request, then it was a decision at the Board of Adjustment that didn't really have any effect because you didn't need a setback on that lot.
Yeah, I don't know without seeing
because
it.
it's well set back from the perimeter.
Well, and the thing is too, right, because you would say, well, you didn't need a setback because the setback would have been from way over here on lot 52. But I think the board's finding, the board's finding specifically said that it recognized these two different lots, and you need a variance for this setback. So I don't know if we're saying the same thing. Maybe we are. It seems like that resolves whatever the board or supersedes whatever the board might have done in the 80s. And the other thing is, I don't think a planning commission in 1980 that has bearing today, only because the code could have and would have, well, I know it has changed substantially in the 40 years since 1980, whenever the Planning Commission looked at it. But I know that's happened, but I don't know what the Planning Commission's decision said because I've never seen it.
Well, can we do this? Can we go ahead and take public comments since folks are here? Subject to whatever decision you finally make and whatever decision is made here.
I don't have an...
Okay, do you want it tabled or do you?
I think we definitely want it tabled. We need to see that.
We can't take public comment then?
And let's not. Yeah.
Do you have you've submitted the Board of Adjustment latest decision to us as supporting documents on the agenda?
Yeah, that's on the agenda, but the other stuff we're talking about
I'm interested in the wording of it.
I mean, I go back to, these are all supposed to be on the record. Why wasn't that made part of the record for me and my client and the folks that are here in the neighborhood? And I realize it was sort of a last-minute thing, but we would all be having a lot better discussion if,
Quite frankly, I assumed that you had it, Vince.
Yeah.
Well, I asked for it and I didn't
No,
get it.
you didn't ask me for it.
Well, I'm not going to ask you. I'm going to ask the city for it, and they didn't give it to me. You could have said, hey, here, it's not on the agenda. We're supposed to embed all of what's on the record on the agenda. That's the city's policy.
It's not part of the record. It was simply a question whether you were aware of it, and obviously you weren't.
No, I know, but obviously the commission was, therefore it was legally part of the record. If the commission has a document that it's going to rely on during its decision, its deliberation, that is factually part of the record.
We're not deliberating. We're asking you a
that
question,
has
and
to
now
be
the
in
matter's been
agenda.
tabled.
So
Can I ask a question?
it's frustrating.
So if the 1986 decision, if you had it, and it says you can't partition these, your recourse then would be to appeal that, I presume, to the Board of Commissioners?
No, not that decision. Our recourse, so let's just assume that all the variables don't apply, and you all say that you're not going to approve recognizing these lots. Then we would appeal that decision to the mayor and commissioners. It wouldn't be an appeal of the 1980 decision because that's in the rearview mirror, but we would have the right to approve the decision that you all make.
But it's a quasi-judicial decision on these lots that says they can't be partitioned.
Yeah, no, actually, it's not.
The
That's-
86?
Yeah, not a planning commission decision, is not a quasi-judicial one like
This is
the-
the Board of
Oh,
Adjustment.
I thought you said the planning commission.
No, I'm sorry. If you look at the 86 decision and you agree that it says you can't partition these, then where do you go with that? Board of Commissioners?
I'm not going to comment on that because I have not seen it. But
Okay.
I will say that I think, that's not res judicata to the current Board of Adjustment's decision. The current Board of Adjustment has determined that we can recognize these pre-existing lots and in fact granted a setback variance for them. And there's nothing to appeal from 1980 at this
Okay.
point.
But you didn't specifically ask them to recognize the 2 lots, did you? That's why I was trying to find the Board of
No,
Adjustment.
we didn't have to because there was not an adverse decision by the city building official. See, the Board of Adjustment, you either appeal a decision by the board, by the city building official, or you take a variance from the code or his decision. There wasn't a basis for a variance, and we had because the city building official had said, and the city had recognized these as 2 lots.
Right.
So there wasn't anything to go to, the board would have said, why are you here? And they recognized it as the 2
Except
lots.
that there's a sentence in their approval that says whether the city ultimately approves the subdivision of lots 52 and 54 is outside the authority of this board.
Yeah, well, I think they can't,
They can't, because they can't petition.
right, but they can recognize the lots, which they did. And they can also say, well, we don't think you need a variance for it, because there wasn't anything to appeal or to seek a variance from. Yeah, that was the answer to the question,
Yeah.
it just, there wasn't a need to tee that up with the Board of Adjustment because it's a non-issue as far as the city was concerned back in the fall of 2023.
And why did you go to the Board of Adjustment?
Well, because we knew we had these 2 lots, and you can see the setback line, this house is not in compliance with this setback line.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm with Mr. Strange, though. I mean, I do find the taxation and those records compelling. And so, I mean, I think we should discuss that.
Well, we can do that when Mr. Robertson comes back to us.
Okay. Does anybody else feel that way?
And we
Yes,
will
I'd
put it
like
on.
to join the chorus here. I'm afraid we're wandering down a circular path, which is only going to cause delay and harm to the applicant here. And I really don't see any good coming out of a decision that would say this can't be done, and that the lots should not be treated as separate parcels, as they always have been.
Mr. Strange.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm beating a dead horse perhaps, or maybe the question is, based on the original letter, there's a 60-year history that says these are 2 separate lots. There may have been some intervening dialogue, from 40 years ago, with the Planning Commission, which I wasn't on at that point, and the city, but I'm not sure what relevance any of that has in terms of the practical reality of what this is. And is there any, I mean, you've requested a delay so you can look at the other thing, but I'm really wondering, from a legal standpoint, from us as a planning commission, is that delay necessary?
Well, I think Mr. Robertson's argument is based upon the concept of estoppel, that the cities has stopped from saying there aren't 2 lots because it has taxed them for all these years, because it did this or it did that. But what's interesting is whether this opinion has any effect. You've asked for a continuance. I would like to get to the next issue for the next folks. We are going to have a special meeting on April 11th, and that could be.
Okay.
But having said that, how many people are here to speak to this application? Can you be brief? Come on up. Come on up. Let's, please.
This is very brief. My name's Jim Fuller. I live across the street at 45 Kent.
Yes, sir.
All I wanted to do is find out if I can have access to the documents that have been included in this presentation. Is that available to the people who live there? So how do I get that?
There are documents embedded in the agenda. They're on the website.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
That you can print out.
Well, she can.
And I'll be glad to share the zoning map stuff with you, so.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I finally get to be the oldest man in the room.
You may not be, that may not be the case.
Well, close enough. But
You state your name, and do
Our
you
family
swear
has
that
beside
any factual
the
statements you're going to make
subject
are true to the best of your information, knowledge, and beliefs?
Need your name, please, sir.
yeah, my name is Herbert High. I own the home at 50 Kent Street. Long time. Our family was friends with Mary Pyle, as we are friends with Chip and his wife as well. And my family was at the 1986 hearings. And the decisions were made at that time. And the minutes are available. The minutes are available, but fortunately, we had the ability to be there and know and understand. And the real question is, just one quick paragraph, the number of deeds seems to matter little, because the owners, current and past owners, have used their property as one lot in the ways just mentioned. It has become what the city refers to as a merged lot, and with respect to you, from the readings of those minutes, you cannot partition a substandard lot from a merged lot. Your actions of 86 confirmed that it was one lot. Nothing has changed to alter that fact. Sussex County says it's one lot, and the city code does not allow lots of less than 50,000 feet. And no one will be harmed by your negative decision.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Robertson, see you on April 11th.
Okay, thank you. Well, who has that information? Just, I mean, who's gonna, Ms. Womack, do you have it? All right, thanks.
All right, thank you, sir.
I want to reiterate, because I don't want you to think, and I hear this gentleman say, he brought up that during the Board of Adjustment meeting, but he didn't read the decision, so there wasn't an issue that we knew there was a decision out there. It was sort of, I thought that there was, this is my recollection, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Just now he did he? All right, yeah, well, we looked, we couldn't find anything, which begs the question too, why'd the city keep taxing it as two lots for 43 years since that, you know, so.
Okay, we understand.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank
sir,
you.
thank you. Thank you.
We'll see you on April 11th.
Yes, sir. Ready to go? 10 Columbia,
Let's get it done.
please.
Well, we already asked about that. That's where they need to go with it, I think, first.
It's
Board of Adjustment to get a variance.
Thing, and then let the new owner come back to divide it.
Yep.
They don't- I don't
Ready?
think they need-
Matt?
they don't- I'm not sure they need-
Ready to go?
Ready to go.
10 Columbia, please.
All right.
Okay, we're doing 10 Clum.
Yep, thank you.
All right. And finally, before you is application number 0224-01. This is a lot partitioning for 10 Columbia Avenue. An application has been submitted to partition the following one parcel into two parcels. 10 Columbia Avenue, AKA lots 10 and 12.
I'm so sorry.
Of Rehoboth Beach Camp Meeting Association subdivision, tax map number 334-14.09-161.00. The parcel is located within the R1 Residential District. Lots 10 and 12 form an imperfect rectangular with varying meets and bounds as shown on the provided survey. The parcel contains 9,990 square feet as shown on the document. The applicant desires to partition the one parcel as shown on an additional survey submitted into two parcels. One parcel shall contain 4,997 square feet, and one parcel shall contain 4,993 square feet. Though these parcels, when partitioned, would not meet the requirements 27022, minimum lot dimensions, A, 1 has at least 50 feet of frontage on a street, and 2 has a minimum area of 5,000 square feet, the parcels created would revert back to the original dimensions created. Should the Planning Commission grant approval, a condition should be set that the entire parcel be brought into zoning compliance to include the removal of all main and accessory structures and lot coverages that cannot be defined as grass, plants, or natural mulch. Once the removal of all items has occurred, the Planning Commission may then require an inspection and further documentation to show that the conditions have been met and that the parcels may be created. Again, I put to section 236 8.1 in for reference. I have determined that this application reverts lot lines to the original layout as laid forth by the forming of the Rehoboth Beach Camp Meeting Association. If approved, the parcels will require recordation with the Recorder of Deeds of Sussex County, Delaware. After the deed has been recorded, the applicant shall submit a live, signed, and sealed survey to finalize and address the parcel created. Once again, the City of Rehoboth Beach Building and Licensing Department has reviewed the application and has determined that the submitted materials are appropriate for Planning Commission review. The city acknowledges that there may be issues identified in this review and that the Planning Commission may identify additional criteria that may need to be corrected or revised in future submission. Consequently, the applicant's rights have not vested by virtue of this determination.
All right. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Fred Townsend from Hudson Jones, Jaywork and Fisher, and Lewis and Rehoboth. I'm here with my client, Michelle Record, who's sitting here to my right. She is a co-trustee of the Yates Family Trust, and she's here with her husband, Pete. We have watched with great interest what occurred previously, and we share some of the issues. I think there's a second issue that you're going to ask me to speak to, which I will confess there's some trepidation regarding that, but I hope you will. I hope you'll understand my position and why we're in this posture. I had intended to proceed in a different fashion. This is a preliminary, or this is a preliminary hearing. So we're here.
Review.
You don't need to see the bells and whistles, and you don't need to see the pictures. And you've identified. I've been given some reason to think there are a couple issues.
Yeah, and again, as with a site plan, but also a subdivision, the main purpose of a preliminary review is to identify factual and legal issues that should be identified and/or resolved before going to a public hearing.
Thank you. So I've been given reason to believe that there's some concern over the authority that this body has after, and to the extent that it may have been maybe less than what the city manager had under the old statute, which was 270-46.1. Given the late hour, I just as soon dive right into that, if that's
Yes, sir.
getting some head nods. Thank you. Okay. I mean, this is an area of town that everyone's very familiar with. We don't probably need pictures. This is an area you can recall quickly to mind. So with that, the 270-46.1 authorized the city manager to approve lot separations and consolidations. It did not authorize the city manager to create new lots. New lots are created in accordance with Chapter 22, Section 22 of the code. But 46.1 included a caveat, which is really important because I think we're losing sight of the significance of that language. The caveat was that the city manager may not separate existing lots that do not conform to the requirements of 270-22A3. So why didn't it just say that the city manager can't separate lots that do not conform with the requirements of 270-22A, which would be the 50 feet of frontage and the 5,000 feet of of area. That's not that's not the test for subdividing these lots. So what 46.1 did was it said, you city manager, you can subdivide plotted lots, and you can do it administratively. But there's one exception. There's one limitation. You cannot do it in an instance where either of the resulting lots being partitioned does not meet the requirements of 22A3, just 3, which is the 4,000 square foot rectangle and the 48 feet of the 48 feet of its shortest side. So that's what the significance of that language is. And by asking for that language to be put back into the code, back into your section, what you're doing is limiting your authority. Now, you may well want to do that. I'm not saying that's the wrong thing, but that language limited the city manager. It didn't authorize the city manager to go out and approve lots that met that criteria, but didn't meet the others. It said that you can. And we see this in development sometimes, where you've got an odd-shaped property, and the developer can meet the area requirements for the creation of 2 or 3 lots, or 4 or 5 lots, however many, in a nice square, present a nice building envelope, and everyone's happy with that. But in order to get that last lot out, because of the pinched sides or something, you'll see an instance where a 50-foot lot could be created that gets pinched in the middle and then maybe wraps around the back. Well, that's not a good lot. So that's what this provision says, is that even though it's a 50-foot, even if it's a 50-foot lot, even if you meet the 5,000 square foot area requirement, you also have to have the 4,000 square foot rectangle. So the significance of that language not being included in your jurisdiction now as a result of the transfer of the authority from the city manager to the planning commission is not that you have less authority, it's that you have more authority. The city manager could approve the segregation of a lot if it was previously plotted. And that this is being misinterpreted in a way that has just the opposite impact of what it was intended to do. The city commissioners apparently didn't think you needed to be limited. And you're asking them to restrict your authority. Like I said, that might be wise on your part. But if there were, and I can't think of any examples, a couple of instances in which merged lots were made up of previously plotted lots on the Wingate plan for the Camp Meeting Association. You may be faced with a request to subdivide those lots into their original dimensions and conclude rightly that you don't like them because they don't offer the 4,000 square foot area. So that's what, if you were to bring that language over, or if it had not dropped off, that's the discretion, or that's a requirement that you would then impose on others in the future. And that might send them to the Board of Adjustment for a variance, saying, I've got a previously plotted lot, I don't meet the 22A3 test, and therefore I need a variance. So if the city's position was that you can't create substandard lots, then why doesn't the code just say it? Why would the code make reference to 270-22A3 and not just say you can't create a substandard lot, even if it was previously plotted, without complying with the first 2 requirements of the minimum lot dimensions, 1 and 2, which again are the 50-foot of road frontage and the 5,000 square feet. I think there's only one way to read that, It's not subject to interpretation any further. It's crystal clear that the city manager was authorized to separate lots into their originally plotted configurations, except in one instance, and that's where you don't have the rectangle. I've got more, I know you have more issues to raise with me, but that's an issue if we want to pause and talk about that, or if you want me to move on. I'm happy to move on if you like.
No, I think you've identified the issue for us, and so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
All right.
you.
So, let's see. So I think the building official is getting it right. The building official report says that though these parcels, when partitioned, do not conform to minimum requirements, the parcels created revert back to the original dimensions. So if the minimum standards applicable to new lots applied to lots 10 and 12, then the conclusion of the building official would be entirely different. He would reword that to say that although the parcels revert back to their original dimensions, they do not conform to minimum requirements. And then he would go on further to say, you may not authorize this partition for that reason. So while I might prefer some stronger language, I do credit Mr. Janis for his careful choice of words, but I think he is getting it right here, that in cases where you're reverting to previously plotted lots, and these are without question previously plotted lots, that they're subject to being subdivided. So then the question is, what is meant then by the provision at 236-9E, which says the Planning Commission is to see that zoning compliance is required in the partitioning of plotted lots? Well, what that is a reference to is not to hold previously plotted lots to the standard applied for new lots. It is to do those things which Mr. Janis has identified here in the next paragraph, where he says, should the Planning Commission grant approval, a condition should be set that the entire parcel be brought into zoning compliance to include the removal of all main and accessory structures, which we would do, and lot coverages that cannot be defined as grass, plants, or natural mulch. So, I mean, in our package, there are a couple of surveys. You can see that there is structure that has gone beyond the property line. That needs to be cleaned up. And all lot area requirements, all lot coverage requirements need to be complied with. In our case, there is a accessory building, and there may be a license to rent it. I don't think this property is rented though, but in any case, that's got to go. So that's what is meant by compliance with the zoning code. These lots are compliant, and to conclude that they're not compliant is probably going to have effects that are much more significant than I can imagine. So we also have an issue of the surveys identifying the lots as being just short of 100 feet. So this is just falling into the same category. We wouldn't allow non-plotted lots to be subdivided in a deficient way without a variance. So anyone wants to create a new lot, Mr. Robertson used the notorious Baywalk example. There might be some others where larger tracts, larger lots are combined for the purpose of, it could be a parking garage someday or any number of different items. Those lot configurations are subject to the standards which appear in 22A. But those are standards apply to new lot creations. This is not a new lot creation. It was also cited that the definition of a lot is contained or was presented during the earlier example, and it makes reference to, it's making reference to previously plotted lots, and that's what we have here. The comprehensive plan refers to these, or continues to show them as lots 10 and 12. They are identified in the deed as lots 10 and 12. Now, I think it's a real peculiarity that in the previous petition, you had lots which are merged for zoning purposes, but getting taxed separately. I have to wonder whether Mrs. Pyle built her house and then bought the lot next door in order to, I mean, I'm just speculating, I have no idea, but I think it's very odd. I think it's a peculiarity that exists because this is a beach community, and many of these older bungalow homes were built on 2 lots, and there was no zoning requirement that the lots be combined in order to do that. I don't know how the Pyle example resulted in separate tax bills, but I don't think the separate tax bills is any kind of a component of this. I don't think, I mean, it might be additional, might give additional weight, but I don't think it's required at all that lots that are merged for zoning purposes, because there's a dwelling that straddles the property line, can be subdivided if the lots were taxed individually versus one that can't be subdivided because the lots weren't taxed individually. I just think it's a kind of a unique thing that has been allowed to take place. Apparently it's caused some problems in their efforts to undo that and treat parcels the way the county does. If you've got 2 lots and you're using them as one, then you get an individual parcel number. But it doesn't extinguish, the county's treatment of it and the city's treatment of it doesn't extinguish the existence of the lots. I think sometimes we get hyper-focused on the period of time within which we're in this community. But, you know, if the ocean doesn't take us, there's any number of different things that can occur in terms of development in these areas. So the extinguishment of the lot and a passage of minimum standards applicable to new lots. Why does it say new lots in Chapter 22A if it was meant to apply to all lots? It applies to new lots, not to previously plotted lots. So that has a big impact on the outcome of our application, of course. But I would just summarize finally by saying the minimum lot requirements applicable to the creation of new lots does not apply to previously plotted lots. Previously plotted lots can be segregated. And it doesn't require any kind of authority that stems from 22A3 to recognize a lot that is 2 inches short, or in our case, 1 inch short on each lot. Those lots were plotted as 50-foot lots. And the city has a long history of treating lots like this as a zoning compliant lot. And the reason they do that is they're trying not to pit neighbor against neighbor. I mean, when it comes to surveying, it's really important that we know exactly where the lot line is. But when it comes to zoning, particularly the frontage, it's really an imperceptible difference. The 1 inch doesn't have any effect on, you know, bulk standards, or it just doesn't have any effect to health, safety, and welfare. So I think that's very important. Now, if you'd like, I can move on to another issue, an irregularity here that.
Well, can I ask you a couple questions?
Certainly.
Mr. Townsend, just on that topic before we move on. You know, I think well, to speak for myself, it's, you know, in your case, apparently the non-compliance with the 5,000 square foot requirement of 27022, by which it does not, it's not, 27022 is not limited to new lots. It says no new lot shall be created, nor shall any existing lot be changed in size or shape unless each new or changed lot. And here, the conundrum, it's more of a procedural conundrum, it seems to me. I don't vote, I'm just being real. The procedural issue here is that both in your case and in the prior case, you have submitted an application for a partition, right? You're the ones who are asking to partition a lot.
Right.
Right? And now the jurisdiction to make that determination, it used to be with the city manager, now it's vested with the planning commission. And the planning commission cannot grant variances. The planning commission has to, and doesn't make laws. We apply the laws that currently exist. Now, maybe, I understand there's a planning board of commissioner workshop early in April on the Chapter 236 amendments, you know, which the planning commission has been arguing for 2 years, including on this issue. And, you know, you may want to think about whether you want to, and your client want to engage as a member of the public, engage the Board of Commissioners, because they're the ones who write the law. And particularly in your case, where the variation seems to be de minimis. De minimis.
I would describe it that way.
It's de minimis, right? And I think everybody's looking at it as de minimis. And maybe which I don't think is de minimis in the prior case, but in your case it's de minimis. And so maybe the legislation could be worded in such a way as to grant the building inspector, or to grant the planning commission, or to grant the city manager some administrative variance power that doesn't currently exist. But be that as it may, we are where we are. The application is before us unless you pull it.
Well,
And let me just posit one scenario, and you don't have to answer. I have a lot of respect for you. I'm not going to, ask you to answer a question that you're not comfortable with it. But just because of the procedural conundrum that I think this body finds itself in under these facts, what's the problem with this body considering the application and granting it with a condition of approval being get the Board of Adjustment to do the de minimis tweak? Why is that a problem procedurally?
Well,
if you're comfortable answering that.
oh, I'm comfortable. The entire premise, though, of what you just put to me, and I have a ever-shortening attention span, but I think I've got this, is that we need a variance. But we don't need a variance unless you're going to hold us to a standard that applies to the creation of new lots, which these are not. These are existing lots. We're not creating new lots. Therefore, we don't have to comply with the provisions of 22A, 1 and 2, which is the 5,000, you all know this better than I do, but the first two provisions that establish what the lot minimums are apply to the creation of new lots. We're not creating new lots. We're not adjusting lot lines. That's why Mr. Janis's report focuses on the fact that, in his estimation, the surveyor has identified the proper line which would revert these two lots back to their original dimensions. These lots are legal, and I can't concede that they're deficient because they're not new lots. I understand how we use in parlance the words lots and parcels interchangeably at times, but they are different. In my estimation, every one of these lots with a dwelling, that straddles a lot line should be getting one tax bill the county treats them as one parcel, but they can be made up of multiple lots. And those lot lines are not extinguished. They're not consolidated for any purpose other than for zoning.
So can I just follow? I don't want to interrupt you. But I just want to make sure I understand your argument. I understand your argument under 27022 that this is not a new lot, but 27022, which still exists in the code, unlike 27046.1, says no new lot shall be created, nor shall any existing lot be changed in size or shape. Are you saying that this is not an existing lot that's going to be changed in size or shape?
I think the words that are used in that phrase are very important. It's not referring to a parcel being changed. It's referring to a lot being changed. And those lots are not being changed. They're not being proposed to be, they're not proposed to be changed. And that's why Mr. Janis is focusing on the fact that the reinstitution of that lot line is a reversion to the original set of dimensions for those lots.
But then why have you submitted the application to partition? That's what I'm struggling with. You've asked to partition a lot.
Partitioning of double lots is always, to my knowledge, requires the approval. I mean, there's sections in here in the code that are specifically devoted to the partitioning of lots, and it indicates that those partitionings are now within your domain, and that if I had two lots that are very oddly configured that were joined and I wanted to partition them, I wouldn't be able to do it unless we had those 4,000 square foot rectangles that are resulting. So somebody's got to, I will say this, I think that the Planning Commission's in a tough spot here, because the Planning Commission typically is reviewing applications and saying, you know what, based on public testimony, based on your individual and collective knowledge, there should be some adjustments made to this development plan. We can add value. But in the code, and I think this is part of the problem, the code is now vests what I would characterize as an administrative responsibility to you all, but it doesn't, there's nothing in there that really tells you how to go about making these decisions. I mean, as I read it, there's almost nothing, there's nothing you can do. I'm gonna state that to an extreme, but if the code says that these lots are reverting to their original configuration, it sounds like that's the only determination that you can make. They either are or they aren't. Now, if people are proposing to combine lots and then re-subdivide them, change lots all around, there is a very important role for you to play in that. But it's unclear to me what standards the Planning Commission is to apply to the reversion of two lots. Now, there can be some sub-issues, some issues involving structure and whatnot that come up. We heard those discussed earlier. But any approval that we would get would be conditional. The condition is that we've got to remove the dwelling because it's straddling the lot line. We have a limited period of time to do it, and we've got to otherwise bring the whole property into compliance with the code, but not the minimum lot size standards applicable to the creation of new lots. So I think that's what I have to say about that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, should I move on to another issue that was identified?
Please.
Yes, and this one, as I said, causes me some trepidation. I need for you all to consider how we got to where we are. This is a unique case. This is not, you're not going to hear this set of facts again, and I think that's fortunate. But these two lots were approved for a subdivision previously, or I should say a lot unmerger to their original dimensions previously. That approval was granted in July of only 2022 by the city manager. The city manager didn't have to rely on the 4,000 square foot test to give that administrative approval. But the city manager couldn't have given the approval if we didn't meet that test. But that's all I'll say about that. I don't want to, I'm mixing issues again. So I'm going to move on. That approval expired on January 5th, 2023. Why did it expire? It expired because, quite frankly, Mr. Yates, Mrs. Yates was the trustee of the family trust. Her husband passed away in December. Actually, it was 12/29 of 2022. At the time, Mrs. Yates, unfortunately, was suffering from her last illness, and she passed away in August of 2023, just before we filed our initial application on this. So during the course of acquiring our approval, both Mr. and Mrs. Yates became infirm to the point where the family was more concerned about them than getting this accomplished. So that brought me to advise or ask or tell Glenn Mandalis, who was the solicitor at the time, as you know, that I'm going to need to come back again. We need to come back to the city manager. And I had a discussion with him. It's really not terribly relevant. I'm not going to stress it. But that occurred in July of 2023. Actually, it was late June of 2023. And I submitted subsequently a draft, which is not part of the record, but a draft letter requesting a city manager administrative approval. Ultimately, I submitted the final application, which I think was provided. I didn't realize this was going to be an issue until late last week, and I think Mr. Mehta has that, and I hope you have seen it. But we submitted a request for a administrative subdivision in August of last year under the law that existed at the time. And we've kind of, ever since then, we've been caught in the middle. And the situation was this, that the city manager became uncomfortable considering the application because unbeknownst to us, because this was just a function of all the different circumstances that the family was going through, we didn't know that there was a potential change in the code that was coming. But we had a pending application, and in September of, I should say, September the 15th, the city voted to swap out the jurisdiction on this issue, as you know. And during the course of that meeting, the city solicitor put on the record that there was a pending application. Everyone should know there's a pending application out there. That was ours. He identified the Yates parcels as the applicants. And he also indicated that the city manager was not comfortable signing off on that. But in my view, we had submitted an application under the then current law, and we were entitled to a treatment under the then current law. And the law now that applies is law that was enacted on September the 15th. So in the interim, my clients entered into an agreement of sale. And that was done also prior to the enactment of the ordinance that is creating some confusion. The prohibition against having a pending contract in association with a lot subdivision like this is only if you're going to the Planning Commission. And we did not envision going to the Planning Commission. We were never told that our application was was faulty or deficient. We were just told that the city manager was not comfortable signing it. And then we later learned the city manager was leaving, which led me to believe that perhaps that's why he was uncomfortable signing it. So we continued discussions, and there were a lot of them. And in every discussion, the fact that a contract existed was always disclosed. And we're not pulling any punches or hiding anything. We entered into a contract at a time when I would assert they had a right to, and a right to pursue the subdivision of these two lots contemporaneously. It was only after September 15th that that prohibition became effective, but we were already under contract. Now what are we going to do? By then, we have a circumstance where the parties owe obligations to one another. So I provided a copy of the contract. I'll add further that we had continuing conversations and meetings over whether the subsequent city manager would be of a mind to recognize that our application was entitled to treatment under the old law. And we didn't really get an answer until December the 5th that was not going to occur. So it wasn't until December the 5th. We'd been under contract by that time for a number of months. So again, everyone here, we're not denying the existence of the contract. We're not trying to get away with anything. And it also didn't feel right to suggest, well, we need to tear up the contract in order to pursue this subdivision. I mean, we feel in a way that I know that this body has not involved in anything until following February 7th or whenever it was that we filed our application. I recognize that. And I'm not directing any of that at you, but I would appreciate it if this commission could at least take into consideration that there was no intent to defy the authority of this commission or to engage in any conduct which is either frowned upon or worse. But it also, again, I felt compelled that that we had to pursue this, and to hold otherwise would be to say that the city manager is not going to give us the relief that we feel we had a right to at least request, and now we can't go to the Planning Commission at all because we've got a contract in place which we entered into at an appropriate period of time. So we're really caught in this thing. And if you were to conclude that that is not an obstacle for the Planning Commission to grant this subdivision, now we have some other hurdles to get over, but if that's not one of them, I don't think you're going to find another case like this one. We're not going to be establishing any precedent where somebody could come to you and say that, oh, you don't enforce that anti-contract language uniformly. Well, if you can, you're just not going to be able to meet this test. It's not going to establish a precedent that is going to have any impact on you whatsoever. So we would appreciate it if you could see beyond that deficiency in our circumstances.
Mr. Townsend,
Yes, sir.
Can you perhaps convince your other land use attorney who represent applicants of what you just said, that there is no precedential value in what we do? We hear different things.
Yeah. Well, I know it is a burden, and words get repeated to you, and context is left out, and you don't really have a great opportunity to defend yourself sometimes to allegations of such things. I mean, I recognize I try not to get involved in city matters, certainly Planning Commission matters and other matters, because of my involvement with the Board of Adjustment. You've probably seen my signature on a number of different things tonight. But my involvement with this family goes back 3 years. I felt like I had to try and see this thing through. You'll probably not. I will not take up I will not bite into Vince's business anymore if I can get through this one, because I don't want to be in a position.
Mr. Town, I don't want to, if you have more to say, I don't want to interrupt you, but when you start talking about the sale of property and all that, my concerns are somewhat logistical, and I see you're in a tough situation, not only with the sale contract.
Thank you for that.
But with the dates on the sale contract, because the process in our application, one of the rules is also that the approvals are granted to the applicant only and do not convey with the sale of the property.
Right.
The applicant that filed the application must complete the process to actually subdivide the property in question and cannot simply sell the property without having completed the subdivision process and cannot rely on the new owner to complete the subdivision process. It's been extended till, I think, till May, and then maybe till June was the outside date. Well, here we are in March. The reason it's preliminary, I guess, is because of all these loose ends.
Right.
That's the whole reason we didn't go straight to public hearing.
Right.
And if we could get various questions, whatever questions everybody else has, answered by then, and we, let's say, could approve it in April, then it's still got to be demolished, it's still got to be recorded with the county, and the demolition permits are issued with a 30-day delay.
That's correct.
Are they not? And then the moratorium against demolition kicks in on May 15th.
Right, understood.
How are you going to do it?
Well, I don't know if we are going to be able to do it.
But
But I don't want to abandon the application. That's the only thing I can say. I mean, we've been at this has been basically a 3-year enterprise. I mean, I don't know if Marvin Yates' name or if any of you knew him. I think he attended a number of these meetings over the years. This was something he wanted to get done for his family, literally. I mean, this was his initiative and his wife's initiative to get this done. I don't know if the contract will close. You never do, but I certainly would not tell you that the sale will take place until after. The sale's not going to take place until after all the conditions are met.
Really? Okay.
And that would apply to the present buyer or any future buyer. I mean, we know we're at the very outer edge, maybe beyond the envelope in terms of getting it done before the summer, but we have been trying our hardest to get.
And because you understand where we come from, the application didn't come in until February, and so it really is. So it's almost like you're setting it up to need, even if we approve it, to then need us to extend it. So it's just extension after extension after extension, and I don't know how we do that.
Well, and that's a tough one. A 6-month approval is, depending on when it comes, is really a 2-month approval or a 1-month approval, given the summer, given the timing of when it's issued. But I would ask you to push this on to a public hearing and give us a chance to get it done. I assure you that I have every reason. This house is not going to be rented. It's not a rental. It never has been. I mean, it's not really relevant, I guess. But it's not going to be rented in September and October and November. I mean, so if we have a chance to get it done either before or after the moratorium, I assure you it's going to happen after all this, after being so close and being, having this beset by these circumstances. I don't think anyone's going to sleep on their rights again. It won't have anything to do with trying to get $2,500 out of a weekly rental, I assure you of that.
Mike has something. Mike Strange.
Mr. Strange.
Yes, I have a general question, because we had an element that occurred several years ago where a property that was going to be subdivided was put up for sale and contracts entered into, and we found out about it, and then they were withdrawn. And I'm questioning, just as a legal matter, that our process requires, as you just pointed out, Susan, that the property before it's subdivided cannot be offered for sale. This has occurred. So my question is, does that mean an illegal act has taken place and we can't approve something ultimately where an illegal act has taken place as part of the process? So I'm concerned about that. Does that mean that the applicant pays a $1 fine to the city? Is there some adjudication at some point? But I'm very concerned about doing something that has built into it already an illegal act based on our code.
May I
So I
respond?
would-
Me, there's two different issues
We can
there.
look into that prior to hopefully April 11 or whenever. I think there are some issues we can talk about, but I think it's ultimately there may be some discretion with the city whether actually, once under these circumstances where the issue seems to have been foisted upon these people
Right, I don't want to do something
rather
that
than.
creates precedent
So
by
I,
accident.
but I think that can be addressed.
And my concern is actually not that. I mean, if we could do some sort of waiver, fine. My concern was more logistical, is that if it can't happen in the timeframes required, then you're just going to be seeking another extension. So I just, I'm trying to get to the end of the road, and I don't, I see more roadblocks.
Thank you. I appreciate
And
the
I think
sentiment.
also the city has a role here too. I think you, counsel for the city solicitor and our council need to discuss a path here. What is the appropriate path?
As
which is
far as
what-
the illegal
yeah.
act, if I could just respond very quickly, I mean, the entering into the contract occurred, okay.
I think,
we
I think,
heard.
right, I think
Yeah,
people
we got
totally
that.
understand that
Okay,
it was
thanks.
foisted upon you. I do want to make sure, again, the purpose of preliminary review is to try to remove as many legal and factual issues as possible, so when we get back here in April, it can be maybe quicker. And you and I can take this offline, but let me just posit the issue. I want to make sure I understand your position. Are you saying that that the present application should be considered as if 270-46.1 were still in effect, or are you not saying that? I think that would be, and you don't have to answer that on the fly. Before you answer that, you should be aware, if you're not aware, that the ordinance was introduced. The ordinance that was passed on September 15 was introduced way back in March of 2023. So it was a pending ordinance as of March of 2023. So, I think between now and when you come back, think about what your position is on that issue.
Okay, I'd be happy to do that. Thank you for the opportunity to consider that in my free time. And I look forward to discussing these issues with you offline, Mr. Mehta, so we can wind them up and not involve the commissioners at the end of a long meeting with issues such as this. So I thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the public to speak to this application?
Do the owners want to speak?
Hearing none?
Okay.
Are we adjourned?
Not yet.
My name is Walter Birmingham, 123 Henlopen Avenue. I have to tell you that a lot of turmoil here and a lot of things have come about. But if it's not extended forward and gets solved by the city, it's going to be a lot worse for the people that come behind you and come behind me. And too many shoot from the hip things, giving the city manager and people like that permission to do things without the possibilities. And currently we're seeing situations like Deauville Beach that were under discussion for a year and a half and the public has not been notified. So it's very important in my mind what you take back to the administration and it get reported openly, so that the public knows what's happening, because you've invested a lot of time, yours and ours and the other people out there. And there's not a lot of appreciation for the fact that you sit there, but you have to do it and you do it in good faith. And for that, we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Brittingham, we'll invite you back again after those comments.
Ann has something. Ann has something.
Ann has
Mike.
something.
Yes, Ms. Ann.
In the past, the planning commission has voted to move an application from preliminary review to public hearing. Are you planning on that?
Yeah, do we want to do
Take a
that?
vote?
That's fine, we can do that. I don't think it's required, but no harm in doing it.
Well, we could do it today. I can also waive it, as I believe, and move it on. The preliminary's over, we're going to public hearing. But is your thought perhaps to do that today?
That's what she's saying. Vote to move it to public hearing.
Yep.
Do we want to do
Is
that?
there a motion to move this matter to public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
And how much discussion?
None.
None. All right.
Aye.
Can we do a voice vote without a roll?
just-
Voice
just-
vote,
just-
okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Okay,
It will go to public hearing.
thank you. Okay, so
We're adjourned.
How do I make a garage into a
I apologize for being late.
And now,